Want to see what I can't show here? Full spicy versions with Naruto characters are already waiting for you on my Boosty. Exclusive content starts at just $5. Link in the description. Don't miss out. Description: Hyuga Hinata is a small, shy Heim, despised by the entire clan for her weakness. Oh no! The new Hinata will show everyone where the crayfish hang out. Prologue. I walked home calmly. The end of the school year was just around the corner, and I was under immense stress before the numerous tests and the not-so-numerous but very important exams, and of course, the incomparable May holidays. I should be studying, but I just wanted to sleep and hang out online, rewatch the latest Naruto episodes, reread the manga, or do anything else. It wasn't for nothing that I'd worked so hard, right? Right. Arena! Rina! Come on, Rin, wait for me! Someone shouted loudly across the street, interrupting my thoughts. Although, who am I kidding? Who is this someone? My friend Yana is also a head-over-heels anime fan, as my classmates say. But they watch anime every now and then, I know that. Swearing at the top of my lungs is rude, I remarked absently, not even turning around as I slipped the backpack strap off one shoulder, slinging the small beige backpack over my shoulder so I could more easily rummage through its half-empty interior. The lessons weren't particularly important that day, so I could travel light. No English, no Russian, no Friday, it was a dream. Pulling the clasp, I winced at the sound of the zipper. It sounded a lot like chalk scraping on a blackboard, or the sound of someone pressing a finger against glass. I hated those sounds, but I didn't have any other backpacks, and my mom refused to buy me anything else, citing that my current one was cluttered with badges and was always slightly dented. And there were no hooks on the desks at school, so my classmates kept stumbling. So, you can swear quietly, as long as it's not loud enough for the whole street to hear. Yanka, who had already caught up with me, grinned ominously. Go on, go ahead, scare me. I don't think anything will come of it. I yawned. Blowing my bangs out of the way, I should have cut them long ago. I reached into my bag, hoping to find my iPod quickly. It seemed like I hadn't put it that far back when we were leaving biology. In your last class, physical education, you can't listen to music. You have no time for that when you're being chased around the gym. No, I'm in good physical shape. I go to gymnastics, but watching others with Yanka, she goes to karate, those who are exhausted after just a few laps, is pure pleasure that nothing can replace. Of course, if you're a good Yana, everything will be fine too, I answered automatically, barely following the conversation. Damn, that annoying strand of hair again. I jerked my head irritably, and my hair, hastily tied back with a hair tie that morning, obediently moved to the other shoulder. Meanwhile, my hands rummaged through my school bag, hoping to find my beloved iPod. My lips muttered something to themselves, today's absent-mindedness forcing me to put my thoughts into words. Textbooks, so, here's the pencil case, here's the pen, and I really wanted to blame it on Sasha. Got it! Grabbing the player by the earphones, I hugged it to my chest with a satisfied expression, quickly zipping up my backpack and slinging it over both shoulders. I inserted one earphone into my ear and rolled my eyes in bliss. The player was on random mode and a song by the band Fleur had come on, which couldn't help but please poor me, who had been pining for music in gym class. Rin, are you even listening to me? No? Yana snorted resentfully, narrowing her honey-colored eyes. I'd always envied her, she had such beautiful, big eyes. And almond-shaped ones too, what a pity that's not me. Well, then I'm upset with you. And anyway, your name is shortened correctly, you're unfriendly. And finishing this tirade, she fell silent. I suppressed a heavy sigh. I had no desire to apologize, but I was in more than enough good spirits to confirm my name. I lazily closed my eyes. Oh, are you really upset with me, Yanina? I asked ingratiatingly, even pausing to fully enjoy my friend's contorted face. I'll never tire of this game of irritating her. And most importantly, her expression is slightly different every time. If only I had a camera. But lacking one, I tried to memorize Yana's face properly. The whole Yanka name thing is a real story. Someone in our class, I can't even remember who, decided to go to the trouble of searching for my friend's full name online. A kind person, a good person, he did something Yanka and I were too lazy to do, since we only used the internet to chat on Skype, read the next chapter of manga, or watch the next anime episode. So, this mysterious someone stumbled upon something that sounded like a full name, Yanina. It seemed appropriate, and everyone should calm down after hearing it once, but our class is something else entirely. Sasha, our wittiest one, came up with the name of meat. Horse meat. Horse meat. No, so what? Yanina is horse meat. And Yanka is furious, because she doesn't like the association. Of course, not everyone would risk calling her that to her face. I'm just so desperate and I don't get hit with some clever trick somewhere in a sore spot, but behind her back, in a whisper. You! She choked, unable to find the words to describe me fully. I just smiled contentedly, because doing something nasty brings joy to my heart. And it's especially nice to feel like the world's evil. Moo ha ha. Thinking this and smiling even wider. This is a great day. I pressed the button on the player, immersed once again in the world of music, distantly watching to make sure I was walking in the right direction. Okay, there should be a crosswalk now. Pfft. That was Yana's way of saying bye. Of course, I can't hear it on the player, but I can tell by the disdainful expression on her face what she's saying. I have to admit, when my friend is upset, her manner of speech is terribly reminiscent of Sasuke. So, here's the pedestrian crossing. The red sign of a standing man is glowing at the traffic light. I, like any law-abiding citizen of the Russian Federation, for some reason, huge signs always seem funny to me, especially in a completely ordinary context, stopped, absent-mindedly looking at some shop on the other side of the road. I wonder if Mom's home? In theory, yes, it's 2:00 in the afternoon, but who knows where she could have gone. She knows I always carry my apartment key with me. Even my strange absent-mindedness today can't overcome my habit of keeping everything I own with me. And then it all began, the prophecy came true. The light turned green, and I stepped onto the road. A nasty, strange premonition crept into my soul, but I shook it off, putting the earpiece on my other ear. I believe it, of course. All that's left is to come up with a catchy, pompous name for myself, and then I can head to Moscow for the Battle of Psychics. Chuckling, I listened to the song, glancing carelessly at the little green man walking. Yes, that's what I call good sound. Alina wasn't the one who recommended these for nothing. I'll have to thank her somehow. I wonder if they have little green men like these on Mars? Or will they be darker than the ones at traffic lights? At the edge of my consciousness, I caught some strange sound, pounding my ears even through my headphones. Snorting and frowning in displeasure, I looked to the left and froze. A small, fat car, the color of walking traffic light men, was barreling toward me, its brakes screeching and leaving black tire tracks in its wake. My displeased expression instantly turned to a grimace of horror, as did the driver's. But for some reason, I couldn't do anything. My body seemed frozen and refused to obey. Damn fear! Why am I such a coward? Somewhere, people started screaming, then others took up their cries. I screamed too, acting like a mirror to the screaming driver, but almost immediately I choked on my own screams, still from terror. Having felt the full brunt of the impact with the car, I choked on air, feeling a merciless squeeze in my chest. It was impossible to breathe. And yet there was this terrible feeling. I tried to spit to get rid of the sticky taste of blood in my mouth, but it only made it worse. Why did I do this? Did the capillaries in my lungs burst, or something? But then, I've never been much of an expert on the human body. I tried to move, but immediately regretted it. Pain. Enormous, all-consuming pain that even drowned out the screams of the people. It turns out I'd been fine back then, just a harmless, stifled breath and blood. Nothing more. But now I could breathe. And I screamed, frightening myself with my own desperate, terrifying scream. It was a quiet scream, but I could hear it perfectly well, even with the beating of hundreds, no, thousands of drums in my ears. The main thing now is to endure, the main thing is to survive. The main thing is to endure, the main thing is to survive. My thoughts became viscous, and even the pain faded into the background. It was as if I was watching in slow motion as my favorite glasses fell and shattered due to a broken frame. Actually, the frame had already broken during the impact, but the glasses somehow held on. The player survived, but I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. My body wouldn't obey me again. The world suddenly became blurry, and tears were added to my poor vision. Was I really going to die? I still have a long life ahead of me, and all because of my favorite music. A good point in my story, or maybe not. My eyes made out blurry white figures, but my vision was failing me more and more with each passing second. The main thing is to endure, the main thing is to survive. Chapter 1. Awakening. And suddenly, I realized I was lying down. Lying on a bed without any IVs, any crap, or other equipment. Yes, crap is also equipment. I realized I was simply lying under a thin blanket, apparently sleeping peacefully until that moment. Only the area below my chest ached strangely, but I didn't pay attention to it. And now I just woke up. Too many. But hope was already beginning to rise in my soul. And there was no collision with a car. But somehow strange, I don't remember having such realistic dreams. I don't remember my dreams at all, and this makes me very sad. I was in some well-lit room, which, most importantly, was furnished in Japanese style. How could I have ended up here? And a stray strand of hair had fallen across my face, blocking my view. I instinctively brushed it away, mentally noticing that my hair was now short. Wait, though. A slow blink, and suddenly the full horror of the situation dawned on me. Short hair? Despite the overwhelming weakness, I jumped up from my low bed and frantically searched the room for a mirror. And oh my God, I found one. Quickly approaching the enormous and, in my opinion, terribly expensive mirror, I gazed greedily at my reflection, and almost immediately, my eyes widening, I jumped back. Anyone could be looking at me, but it certainly wasn't me. The differences were too stark. I used to have long, chestnut-colored hair with wavy ends that were constantly splitting, but now it's almost like a boy's, short and black with, here I sharply inhaled a much-needed breath, a bluish tint, impeccably straight, and a little unkempt. The girl looking back at me from the mirror had large, light lilac eyes, while I had dull, slushy gray ones. And after all, it wasn't the girl I was looking at from the mirror, but some 9-year-old toddler. Her bare arms hinted at emaciation. I'd never experienced anything like that myself, but I'd visited a friend of mine in the hospital who'd been seriously ill for a long time. She had the same pale skin, the same face with prominent cheekbones, and the same painful thinness as this toddler. Taking a closer look, I realized that it was too early to panic. The girl was apparently small, and I was comparing her to an older friend, especially since this light-eyed girl was clearly thin in her own right. You only have to look at her fingers. So why are the index fingers bumping into each other? Pop! The scattered pieces of the picture came together, and I barely kept myself from bursting into hysterical laughter. Light lilac eyes, strange short hair, and finally, that memorable gesture. My legs suddenly felt weak, and I somehow dragged myself to bed, feeling even more weak than I had when I jumped out of bed. It felt like a fever, by the way. But tell me, how could I end up in Hyuga's body? Hinata, one of the heroines of the manga anime Naruto? Although, that's not the right question. Why am I not in my body? Am I really dead? I slumped against the pillow, staring blankly at the ceiling. Tears were slowly pooling in the corners of my eyes, but I tried not to notice them, blinking and choking from the overwhelming helplessness and hopelessness. I have parents, friends. How can I live without them? How can they live without me? I curled up into a ball, feeling a sudden pain tear through my chest. What the hell? Clenching my teeth so that the audible sounds of sobbing wouldn't penetrate the door, I breathed through my nose, blinking back tears. Okay, Rina, What's with all this hysteria? Calm down now. Hinata-sama? Hinata-sama, are you awake? What's wrong? Someone's voice was heard, first tired and monotonous, then worried. Oh, it seems they heard, or saw, the Byakugan, right? I turned toward the voice, pressing my hands to the sore spot. It hurts so much. I managed to squeeze out through clenched teeth. The tears were sticking unpleasantly to my eyelashes, but I stubbornly refused to wipe them away. The guy who'd spoken was impressed by my tear-stained face, and he quickly disappeared somewhere, casting a worried glance at me. A few minutes later, through my already fading pain, I heard the sound of feet. Taking a deep breath and suppressing a couple more sobs, I calmed down. So, we conclude that Hinata is a crybaby, since I've never been one. Or am I just being too hard on a little girl? That's exactly what Hinata is, a small, exhausted girl who, judging by the buzzing in her head, is sick with something. 3 people entered the room, 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men, my recent acquaintance, had clearly been explaining something to the other for a while. I couldn't quite place the intonation of his voice, but I did catch his expression. It was slightly irritated, which was a huge indicator for the otherwise indifferent Hughes. Second came a black-haired man named Hayashi. That's where her near-memory knowledge of anime came in handy. Hinata's father is a complete jerk who doesn't value his eldest daughter. Judging by her behavior in the anime and manga, it's not for nothing. Not everyone has insight into people's thoughts and feelings, so the power that lurked within this girl had only been glimpsed a few times before Pain's attack. And even then, it was far too soft. The third guest turned out to be a girl with a soft, reassuring smile, also black-haired and, like everyone else, with strange, light lilac eyes. She plastered a reassuring smile on her face and approached me, carefully placing her hand on my chest. I felt a soft, almost weightless touch. Her palm was immediately enveloped in a light green glow, or, judging by its consistency, a haze. What hurts, Hinata-hime? Her voice was soothing. I barely suppressed a smile. What a sweet psychological ploy, especially considering Shansen was about to give her all the information. But I probably don't know. I'm just a scared little girl. Weakness, my head is a little dizzy, and also. I paused and touched the spot just below my chest, where the pain that had been tormenting me just recently, and was even now showing signs of life, was concentrated. And here, medical Nin-san. And what's your name? I don't remember anyone here. A total hit. I think that guy almost had a heart attack. But the amnesia idea is my only salvation, because I'm not Hinata, and I'm unlikely to become an exact copy of her. Here, Hinata-hime? The girl asked calmly, moving her hand exactly where I pointed. I immediately felt better, and I relaxed, breathing deeply. After my short nod, she continued. My name is Jin. Hyuga. Do you remember your name? And here's a crucial moment. To speak or not to speak, that is the question. I closed my eyes, as if deep in thought. I'd never suffered from memory loss and didn't know anyone who had, so I'd have to improvise. Hyuga. Hyuga. Hinata. I said the first word hesitantly. A good actor, you say? I'll answer that I'm simply afraid of being exposed. But shattering my fears, the medic smiled with relief. I smiled back, but immediately tensed when I saw Jin raise her eyebrows. There was more disbelief in that gesture than surprise. Hinata-hime, something's happened to your chakra core. Her thoughtful voice made me flinch. Oh no! Practically everything depends on chakra here, and if something happens to mine, I'll simply become crippled. My thoughts paused for a second. Have I already resigned myself to my role as a shinobi? But then the words rushed out. This is unacceptable. My face must have reflected genuine horror, because Jin looked at me quizzically. I looked down and squeezed out the words, marveling at my returning sense of humor. You said it in such a way that it scared me. And them too, I said, pointing modestly at the boy and Hayashi. And yes, I wasn't lying. Those two were probably more scared than me. And the mask of an evil, tyrant dad isn't so impenetrable, Maybe he wanted the best for Hinata. For example, he wanted to protect his less prepared eldest daughter from intrigue, the burden of power. I stared thoughtfully at the ceiling. It would be interesting to know. Don't be afraid, Hinata. The hearth itself is fine, but the chakra. I need to take a closer look. Byakugan! She took her hand off my body for a second to make a seal, and then put it back on my chest, but this time both, not just one. Oh yeah, and she was staring at me with her eyes, which was a little irritating and alarming. What if she sees that Hinata isn't Hinata? Who knows what that dojutsu does? Don't be afraid, Hinata. Jin repeated soothingly, as if reading my thoughts, tearing her gaze away from the area just below my chest for a second and looking into my eyes. I twitched the corner of my lips and looked away. The bulging veins frightened me, as did the capillaries visible in my eyes, and the lack of a pupil evoked something akin to disgust. No matter how you look at it, the Byakugan is not a sight for the faint of heart. The chakra has become denser and thicker, but there's no noticeable bias in either direction, which means she'll be able to learn the gentle hand style. I can even imagine that our taijutsu will be more effective if performed by Hinata. The Byakugan hasn't suffered either, it's even become stronger. She paused, puzzled, and waved her hand over my eyes again. Yes, it's definitely become stronger, about the same as Niji-kun's. That's all I can determine without a detailed examination. She spread her arms and stepped away from me a little, glancing briefly at Hayashi. He seemed oblivious to the girl, me, or the entire room, absent-mindedly staring out the window. Jin, put Hinata to sleep, maybe she'll remember everything, the clan leader ordered, not even looking in my direction. Maybe if I fall asleep, I'll wake up in a different body from Hinata's? I obediently closed my eyes. Don't be offended, Hinata, Jin said quietly, approaching me. I chuckled just as quietly and sadly. What sound advice? Not to be offended by what? By Hayashi, who showed his indifference, or by the villain fate, who had set this up for me? Jin placed her hand on my forehead, and a pleasant warmth began to spread from the place where she touched. It was calming, making my eyelids grow heavy and my breathing slow. I woke up clutching my head. Jumping up and down on the bed and muttering obscenities under my breath wasn't good, especially not the traditional Russian kind. My head hurt too much to ignore. Believe me, the human brain only functions at a measly percentage. Learning someone's life in one night, that, let me tell you, is incredibly painful. What if I'd gotten to Hinata 2 or 3 years later? Laughing nervously, not particularly thrilled about the prospect, I rolled out of bed, noting that my weakness was lessening, my head was spinning only occasionally, and my body was clearly improving. I froze in front of the mirror again, examining myself more closely. I'm short, I should note, though I remember Hinata being, no, 10. After searching my memory, I finally clarified that I wasn't 10 yet, but would be in a month. Oh, if I kept searching my memory like that, I'd be considered retarded for it. My skin was fair, my face slightly rounded. I should have been, from what I recall. Right now, though, my cheeks were normal. My eyes were large, beautiful, a light lilac. My hair was short, and really did have a blue tint. Holy Kishimoto! I twirled the jet black lock in my hands. Soft, that's good. Very good. I'm just a little short. All this is well and good, of course, but now Hinata is gone, and I am here. I don't know, honestly, how I ended up here. It was probably just a coincidence, but now I will live. Her memories are now my memories, and her feelings will gradually become my own. I can already feel it. My name is now Hinata, and I shouldn't separate myself and myself. I'm just a little smarter and a little older than I was before yesterday, that's all. In the meantime, I'll probably play the girl who's lost her memory. I still can't replicate Hinata's behavior from before. I have different gestures, movements, and a different way of speaking, so pretending not to know anything is much better. Yes, that's what I'll do. And I'll also stand up for myself as the heir to the clan head, as a Haim. I'm a bit of a mouse, but I'm not a wimp, and I can take offense. Hinata-sama, are you awake? The same guy peeked into the room. It's a good thing I'm wearing light pajamas, otherwise it would have been an embarrassment. After a moment's hesitation, I shook my head, understanding the underlying meaning of the question. No, dear clansman, I still haven't remembered anything for you. A change in behavior would arouse too much suspicion. How so, Hinata-sama? Well, I'm not dead, right? She smiled timidly at the slightly surprised boy and continued. I'm alive. Everyone's alive. So why don't I just learn everything again? Hyuga blinked in confusion, then, after a moment's hesitation, bowed, as if considering it. It wasn't deep, only the clan leader was greeted that way, but it was clearly deeper than before. I don't understand, what kind of Japanese culture is this, where everyone bows to each other? And the clan I'm the heir to is very zealous in its traditions. I can't vouch for it, as most of my knowledge comes from various fanfictions. I've watched and read manga and anime, but everything's already become confused, so it's very difficult to figure out what's canon and what's the author's whim. You're the heiress of the great Hyuga clan. I think if you stick to your word, Hayashi-sama will accept you. The boy straightened up and smiled slightly. It seemed he was genuinely concerned about me, unlike that. Daddy? My name is Ko, and I take it you remember yourself. Get dressed, breakfast will be ready soon. Still in shock from the bow, I nodded, and Ko left. Damn, the baby has grown so big. Chuckling softly, I glanced around for a closet or something similar. The main criterion was something to store things in. Luckily, such a thing was quickly found, and I thoughtfully examined my things. Not much. After looking through my things again, I came to the conclusion that it would be better to wear my house yukata. To avoid, so to speak. I don't remember how much my relatives respect traditions, so this would just be a precaution. And I looked quite nice in this yukata. Beige suited me, and the wonderful floral pattern only added a touch of flair. Leaving the room, I was at a loss. Where should I go? I didn't really want to stand there like a pillar of salt, scrolling through my memories, and if I stood there and tried to remember where people ate, I'd wonder how I'd remembered nothing, yet I knew where to eat. Sighing, I decided I should eat on the first floor, and descended the stairs, carefully handling the banister with my left hand, which seemed impossibly fragile in appearance, yet utterly beautiful. Hello, Hinata-sama, a man of clearly middle age said, pausing slightly and bowing. Who? My name is Benjiro, and I am one of the elders. I don't think I need to specify which clan. Oh, what a cold tone, what is he hinting at? That I should pay him respects? That's not difficult for me. I bowed cautiously. Not too deeply, my pride simply wouldn't allow me more, but I think it's enough. He simply cast a thoughtful glance at me and left, chuckling vaguely. And what am I supposed to make of that? I'm sure the look I gave him was incredibly sour. I shook my head and, casting my eyes around, cautiously entered the spacious, bright room. The whole house was painted in light colors, so it was hard to notice the difference, but the size of this room. My mother is Uzumaki, my father is the Hokage. Why so much space if there's only a table in the room? And it looks like I've come to the right place. There's my father sitting there, looking indifferent. You're late, Hinata. Did I say something about a cold tone? If so, forget it. Hayashi's voice could freeze lakes, no seas. I barely kept my face straight. I wanted to spit out something poisonous. I knew how to stand up for myself and had no complaints about my tongue. A clear difference from before. Excuse me, Odo-sama. I bowed deeper than I had to the elder, suppressing my pride screaming at the injustice. Unfortunately, my memory didn't return, and I had to search for a long time to find my way. You may sit, he said, gesturing to the seat to his right. I straightened up and, counting slowly to 10, walked to my seat and sat down. Across from me, or rather to Hayashi's left, sat a girl who looked suspiciously like Hanabi. Although, what am I saying? That is Hanabi, except she's not 7 now, like in the first part of the anime, but about 5. But that didn't change anything. She was just as cold as in the story I remembered. She's probably already taking after her father. Casting aside these unnecessary thoughts, I picked up my chopsticks and, after saying a prayer, tried to grab some food with them. The result surprised me greatly, but I try not to show it. Even in that world, I had been good at containing my emotions in public, and I had my character to thank for that. It was as if I'd truly been raised specifically for this. Holding back a nervous laugh, I wondered why I was here after all. Coincidence is a very good explanation, but still, maybe I'm some kind of messiah? Sent here to prevent a war, to make Naruto into something. Smart guy, and Hayashi is a great father. By the way, why not? I'll save the world, since I'm here and know everything that happened right up until Naruto and Sasuke gained the power of the Rikudo. And that, I tell you, is quite a lot. 6 years of foresight, in fact. Quite a bonus. I also know the principle of the Rasengan, and I'll remember something else. How good it is to be a time traveler with my own memory. I can't say the character is promising in terms of knowledge about him, though. While everything is clear with Sakura, Naruto, and Sasuke, all that's known about Hinata is her clan's techniques. The chopsticks struck the empty plate with a soft clatter. I glanced at it in surprise and, looking up at my father, received a curt nod. He understood that I wanted to leave this incredibly hospitable company. At least I had that to thank him for. The moment I glanced at Hayashi, my good mood vanished, waving a handkerchief and leaving behind not even a note. You're starting school next week, Hinata. His voice caught up with me as I left the room. I nodded without turning around. I didn't want to see his indifferent expression. I'd already stepped over the threshold when I heard another phrase that made me turn around. And you know, Hinata, I wouldn't want you to disgrace our clan there. His face was serious, but not indifferent. Progress. I nodded slowly, narrowing my eyes, wondering where I could have put my notes. I had no doubt they were there. I'm a neat girl, I like things clean and organized, so, recalling, my knowledge wouldn't be a problem. But I had to answer my father, who was clearly expecting it. I'll try not to disappoint you, I said evenly, turning and leaving the dining room. Yes, that's right. No paternal love or affection, just bare facts and formal requests. But we're tough, right? We're going to save the world, which means we don't care about anything and don't care if we want to see a normal father. And a mother, but here's the problem. I know from the previous world that she's dead. That's probably why Hayashi is such an insensitive idiot. Excuse me, Hinata-sama. Someone almost bumped into me, but I managed to move aside. They looked at me with disdain and superiority and, with only a bow, they left. So this is what he's like, Niji. Hyuga. I shook my head and clenched my teeth. Going upstairs, I closed the door behind me and leaned my back against it, breathing deeply. The fact that I was now in the territory of people who could see through walls somehow faded away, and I suddenly, leaping up, slammed my fists into the wall. The pain sobered me and made me ashamed of my wild impulse. And yet this was all Hayashi's fault, and Niji's stomping around. Arg, I really should have met him? And damn, it's so hard to force myself to remain calm even in emotional situations. So I lost it, so stupidly and recklessly. Father is probably shaking his head now, if he's watching. How could this happen, my dear, and I just believed you could be strong. Yeah, if only. I hate it when people look at me with disdain. Indifference, apathy, fear, hatred, anything can be tolerated, in my opinion. But not contempt. It feels like acid corroding, burning, turning everything to dust. I, Rina, wasn't looked at like that, but I, Hinata, was looked at by Hayashi, Niji, the elders, and I, Rina, the dominant personality, didn't like it. I carefully raised my hand to eye level, glaring at my reddish knuckles. I needed to calm down somehow. What do shinobi do for this? I glanced around the room, and my gaze fell on a kunai hanging on the wall. It was clearly decorative, large, beautiful, and carved in some way, probably a terribly expensive piece of jewelry, but I never complained about that. The answer to my self-questioning came to me naturally: training. So, I should go train too. The main thing is not to kill yourself in the process. With a sad chuckle, I went to the closet, hoping to find something to train with. Surprisingly, I found quite a few. This surprised me. I always thought Hinata didn't train that much. If she had, she would definitely have become stronger than her little sister. I understood her talent and all that, but the age difference was unsettling. No matter how you look at it, if you're 5 years older than some brat, you're stronger. Having pulled on the last piece of clothing, I twirled in front of the mirror and was satisfied. The first few items I came across that even minimally matched each other, and voila, a new training suit was ready. I chuckled, shook my hair, and headed for the exit, intending to ask the first person I met where the training grounds were. And I wouldn't care what face this Hyuga made. Hinata-sama? Where are you going? As I was already descending the stairs, a slightly mocking voice caught up with me. Niji? Oh, how I miss you. It would have been better if I had never met you. However, you can show me the way, dear brother. And train me at the same time. Niji and I-san? I'd like to go train, but I don't remember where the training grounds are. It was said in such a sad voice that brother probably didn't even notice the sarcasm. And even if he did, and I-san threw him off balance. You can tell by the way his hands trembled. I'm sure he now completely believes that I'm me, who's just forgotten everything. And I don't know how to train. Brother, will you train me? I was pleased with the effect. No, honestly, the perpetually cold anime genius's mouth, slightly open as he searched for words, was like balm to a wounded soul. I smiled softly. He'd obviously agreed to take me, though, because he silently turned and headed in a completely different direction than he'd been heading. I paused slightly, then followed him. Maybe I could even turn him into a human being. As we walked, I looked around, inwardly admiring the beauty of the neighborhood. How could I have never noticed it before? And the air here is much cleaner than in my previous world. Yes, definitely cleaner. It's easier to breathe freer. Here's the training ground, Hinata-sama. Niji stopped suddenly, so suddenly that I almost crashed into him, stopping just a millimeter before the junction of my nose and his back. With dire consequences for my nose, of course. What are you doing, Aho? The insult flew out of her mouth. Calmness waved her hand and smiled joyfully, baring her fangs. It's not for the clan princess to swear. The cousin was clearly offended. Look at that displeased look. Is that a vulnerable soul hiding behind that cold mask? Don't give me that ramen. Here's the training ground, Hinata-sama. Are you sure you want to practice? I sighed. Apparently, I wasn't very good before. What can I say? We'll fix it. I don't have any unimaginable powers, and I'm not a shinobi at all, but I do have knowledge of the future, something others don't have. Although that won't help me much now, especially when my head starts spinning again. No, brother, I won't train. You will train me. It was a pity I couldn't see his face. I had to close my eyes to hide my state. When I opened them, Niji looked at me impartially. You asked for it, Hinata-sama. He warned, frowning. It sounded, frankly, like you asked for it. First, let's get you physically prepared. And they made me run, jump, and do push-ups. Don't think they did it in that order. No, they combined the exercises and tried to make them as difficult as possible. That's it. Now I understand for sure that all my relatives in this world are crazy. Some are too indifferent, some look up to someone else too much, some even decided to sacrifice their lives for an ungrateful brother, and someone else is a perverted maniac when it comes to training. My brother praised my stretching, but the praise was only a guess. He simply chuckled approvingly. That was all. Then I just sighed. Clearly, the emotional limit had been reached. I nearly fainted a couple of times, but the first time I managed to grab the ground, the second time I stayed on my feet, and the third time I grabbed Niji. He clearly didn't appreciate it, and simply shrugged my hand off his shoulder, his pupilless gray eyes blazing angrily. I took a step back, clenching my teeth. It was unpleasant. I think we can call it a day, Niji said, breaking the slightly tense silence. I looked away, kicking the ground with the toe of my sandals, and then snorted softly as small pebbles instantly lodged themselves under my heel. After a few training sessions, my cousin even generously offered a lecture, giving in to my pleading gaze and threat to faint so Niji could carry my bulk home himself. I don't know what swayed him more, but I got a couple of sentences. Chakra is a blend of yin, the dark energy of the spirit, and yang, the light energy of the body. To develop chakra reserves, one must train both body and spirit. To sense chakra, one must form the seal of concentration. I repeated my brother's fingerdip, mentally praising myself for having seen the seals clearly in the other world. It was all the more unexpected to feel a strange warmth just below my chest. Instantly realizing what it was, I mentally reached out to it, closing my eyes. It was easier that way. When I finally reached for the warmth, I felt it throughout my entire body. In some places, the warmth ran in a thin, barely perceptible stream, while in others it was thick. The latter included the channels in my arms, head, and slightly thinner in my legs. So, that's what the chakra circulation system looks like. Fun. But I couldn't see the Tenketsu. They can probably only be seen with the Byakugan activated. Niji and I-san, tell me, how do I activate the Byakugan? I opened my eyes and let my hands hang freely at my sides, as if by the very question I was making it clear I'd sensed the chakra. My brother grimaced slightly. It seemed he wasn't all that pleased with my success. Is it fate again? The elder branch looming over the younger branch. And all that other nonsense? That's enough for today. My cousin replied a little sharply, turning away and leaving me standing alone at the edge of the training ground. Hey, is it really okay to leave a girl alone, unsupervised, and a princess at that? That's right, it's not allowed. I hurried after him, my lips pursed in resentment as I went. A perfect relationship with my family. Chapter 2. Byakugan. Ko-san, wait for me, please. Hyuga stopped and turned around, maintaining an emotionless mask on his face. I was glad I'd found him almost as soon as I entered the estate. He must have been about to leave, but I caught up with him. I should have entered through the front entrance, too, so I definitely wouldn't have missed him. But in the clan quarter, I was a bit lost. He was too big for me. Hinata? He didn't look surprised, but his voice was failing him. I winced, catching my breath. Running hurt after training. Especially after training given by my beloved older brother. Can you tell me how to activate the Byakugan? It's just that when I asked Niji-san, he got offended and left. I caught myself touching my index fingers again. But Ko frowned. I quickly spread my fingers and bowed my head slightly, puzzled. What secrets does the Hyuga family keep? Or are these Niji's personal hang-ups that they don't want to tell me about? You see, Hinata-sama. He hesitated, but continued, looking me firmly in the eyes. I shrugged. My clan has a terrifying look. The elder and younger branches of the clan activate the Byakugan differently. The younger branch depends on the seal in everything, even in activating the dojutsu. Ko narrowed his eyes slightly, clearly watching my reaction. My guard isn't that simple, not that simple, I'm sure of it. And about the eyes. They were all a different shade. Some were lighter, some were darker, some had a richer lavender hue, while others were almost non-existent. Add to that the different eye sizes and shapes, and you get a huge variety of Byakugan. And all this evoked conflicting emotions in me. An activated Byakugan was a disgusting sight, but deactivated it was not bad. And more precisely? I asked calmly. Until I understand what's wrong, I won't sympathize. Alas and alack. Through the seal, Hinata-sama, all chakra must be channeled through the seal for any action. And it slows down any techniques, including the activation of the Byakugan. I think Niji was hurt by the memory of the elder branch having it easier. He was always a bit wayward, Ko said, choosing his words. I rubbed my forehead. Unfair, I agree. And yet another reason to hate the elder branch and envy the untalented cousin, right? To wish to be in her place, to curse Hayashi, who was born before her, and much, much more. How delightful! So I'll have to ask my father? I asked gloomily. I could already picture his icy gaze, his precise, to-the-point phrases, his disdainful expression. But Ko shook his head, and I leaned forward. Fortunately for you, Hinata-sama, I know how the Elder Branch activates the Byakugan, but only in words. Ko said. I can't tell you the sensations, so the process may not be easy. He warned. I replied calmly, smiling serenely. Let's hope your words are enough for me, Ko-san. Ko immediately nodded and turned, striding toward the training grounds. And my training continues. I just came back from another one of Niji's taunts, and now here it is again. It's not that it was all that terrible, though. I felt myself growing, and it was incredibly gratifying. Make a concentration seal with your hands, Hinata-sama. Ko began as soon as we arrived. He paused, watching me quickly, but a little hesitantly, formed the squiggle, and then continued without stopping. Then feed chakra into your eyes. When you feel a burning sensation you can't stand, you'll know it's enough. The more chakra you can feed into your eyes before it starts to burn, the stronger your Byakugan, the further you'll be able to see, and the greater your chance of seeing a Tenketsu faster. The longer you can maintain the Byakugan's activation, the better your clan techniques will be. It's that simple. Simple? I chuckled doubtfully. No, simple, but I don't see the connection, and I don't like that. Ko immediately activated his Byakugan. Is he watching to see how much chakra I'll expend? Wonderful, just let him tell me later. I closed my eyes. I'll try it this way the first time, then, once I get a feel for it, I'll try it with my eyes open and as quickly as possible. But I already activated the Byakugan, why? I asked quickly, concentrating. Jin told me that after the illness, changes occurred in your chakra center and in your Byakugan, that's why. Ko kindly explained. Once again, just like during Niji's memorable training session, I felt a warmth below my chest. But now, when I reached for it, trying to direct it upward, toward my eyes, the warmth turned into heat. A very, very intense heat. Ignoring it, I drew a thin thread of chakra up to my eyes. As soon as I did, it was as if ice had been placed on my eyelids, but the sensation only lasted a few seconds. It's like you're activating the dojutsu for the first time, Ko muttered thoughtfully. I hummed something questioning, and he explained. What I see is very similar to activating the eyes for the first time. The chakra is resisting too strongly. I was pumping a thin stream of chakra into my eyes, but the burning sensation didn't appear. But just when I was about to give up, thinking I'd lost my Byakugan, the burning sensation appeared. It wasn't too bothersome, but I noticed it and slowed the chakra flow even more. Let Ko get a better look, while I waited for the burning sensation to subside and wondered how much chakra I'd pumped into my dojutsu. The burning sensation came, and I was surprised to discover I'd used very little chakra, and the process had only dragged on for so long because the chakra, as Ko had said, was actually resisting. I stopped pumping it, and the unpleasant sensation instantly vanished, as if it had never been there. Opening my eyes, I whistled in delight, ignoring Ko's muttering. The nearly 360-degree field of view slammed into my brain, and I think I almost suffered some kind of sensory shock, which, if I dug into my memory, the past Hinata had suffered, but it was worth it. Hinata-sama! Ko breathed out admiringly, coming closer. Your Byakugan is probably stronger than Niji's, though I'm not sure. But your eyes were much, much weaker before. I nodded. Excellent. Like Niji, you say? Niji is a very strong shinobi, and being at his side is already an honor. It's such a shame that my cousin is a genius, and even this leap of faith doesn't guarantee I'll still be around by the time the main events unfold. He's only a year older than me, and yet, unlike me, he already sees Tenketsu and can fully use a Juken, not the pathetic imitation I can. I see, Ko. Today, let's just see how long I can last with the Byakugan activated and all that, okay? When Hyuga nodded, I continued, frowning slightly. My eyes were starting to burn again. And tomorrow I'll try to remember Shoti, you'll help me, right? My teacher nodded, and I rubbed my brow. Shoti is that very simplified version of the Juken, which only requires its user to have the Byakugan and activate it to see the SCC. But now I had a more general goal, to reach the same level as Niji. I couldn't keep the Byakugan on for more than 10 minutes. After that, my eyes would start to burn and sting, so I had to quickly learn how to deactivate the dojutsu. Ko, however, was happy. Niji's record at my age was 9 minutes, but I still wasn't in a hurry to boast. That's the maximum time, and reaching it is highly undesirable. So I keep my eyes activated for about 7 minutes, return them to their original state for about 2 minutes, and then do another 7 minutes. Not indefinitely, of course. Limits of endurance, shock from the abundance of information, simple chakra exhaustion. There are many possible causes. And the distance I can see is about 150 meters. That doesn't make me happy. In canon, as far as I remember, Niji blabbed something about 10 kilometers. In any case, activating the Byakugan took me a full 10 seconds, and such a huge number made me nervous. 10. I'd be killed 100 times over, not even by the Akatsuki's tough guys, or even by Chunin. And then there's that hand seal for activation, and the words. It's just inconvenient. It's so good that deactivating the dojutsu is instantaneous, and requires nothing more than a willingness. Mentally summing up the results of this peculiar training session, I sighed and asked Ko to start teaching me how to develop my eyes. There were two options: either improve my vision range, which automatically included the ability to see Tenketsu more quickly, or try to improve my clan style. I snorted at the illogicality of Ko's question and chose the first option. What's a clan style without Tenketsu? But I want to see Tenketsu. I want to use Juken. I want the blows of heaven. I went to bed exhausted, but satisfied. It had been a good workout, and I fell asleep easily afterwards, without tossing and turning. That didn't happen often, for which I'm extremely grateful to Ko. Or should I thank Niji too? I'm not sure. I'd barely closed my eyes when I seemed to open them again, unexpectedly refreshed. Only a slight fog in my head and a complete mess on my own head suggested I'd slept. Looking at myself in the mirror with a grin, I decided not to traumatize the psyche of any strangers and to wash my face, comb my hair, bring myself back to normal. After my morning routine, I looked at myself again and, satisfied with the results, climbed into the closet. We have the academy on schedule. Meeting with Naruto, then. I chuckled as my heart started beating faster. Funny, but it wouldn't affect my appearance in the slightest. I have shorts, a mesh tank top. What if I'm training? That thing can block chakra a bit, and I also found a top to wear underneath, so it won't be too uncomfortable. Forget the jacket, it's hot outside, and the academy classrooms will probably be stuffy too. I don't understand how some people like Kiba and Naruto wear warm clothes. It's summer here all year round, only a little cooler in winter, and there's about a month and a half of rain. That's all. The rest of the time, it's pure hell. There was a knock on the door. I raised an eyebrow and, adjusting my clothes, went to open the door, wondering who it was. It turned out to be Niji, who told me I needed to go downstairs to have breakfast with my family, and then he would be waiting for me at the exit of the block to take me to the local assassination school. I thanked him timidly and, smiling sweetly, said I was on my way down. Then I slammed the door in his face. Nothing personal, but I still had my notebooks in my bag. "Hello, Hayashi-sama, Hanabi-Amuto," I greeted ceremoniously as I came downstairs. Hanabi looked tired and, looking up at me, almost immediately looked away indifferently. I wouldn't say it offended me, but it certainly didn't make me happy either. "Sit down." Hayashi turned his head slightly and narrowed his eyes. "Wow! Progress!" I barely restrained myself from saying it out loud and stared at the food. Don't think about sarcasm, Hinata! Especially in front of Hayashi. He'll just put a seal on it, and that's it. While I was eating, I was suddenly overcome with philosophical thoughts. What if everything turns out like in the manga? Naruto will go after Sakura, who doesn't even notice a guy like that, and I'll be left out in the cold. And even if I confess my feelings to Naruto during Pain's attack, nothing will happen. Although it's understandable why nothing happened there, Naruto is full of iron, the fox is raging, the blood is pounding in my ears, and Hinata is quiet. He simply didn't hear her. I almost snorted. Well, I couldn't even suffer properly. My logical mind had ruined everything. Glancing at my watch, I hurried and quickly gobbled down the rest of the food. Remarkably, they didn't give me a bento, and why would they, right? Waiting for that from Hayashi would be like learning that Madara had finally died. Goodbye, Hayashi-sama, bye, Hanabi-Amuto. I bowed to my father, nodded to my little sister, and walked away with dignity, mentally panicking. It was just the wrong time to forget where the exit from the estate was, and my cousin was waiting for me. I looked around in confusion and suddenly noticed Niji. What? Although that's true. Geniuses are geniuses for thinking of everything. And right now I was grateful to my cousin. He waited in a place accessible to me, although he easily could have not done so. Thank you, I told him sincerely. Niji nodded weakly, turned his back on me, and walked away without looking back. I wasn't offended, but the corner of my lips twitched. If we were on warmer terms, he wouldn't have been able to avoid a playful argument. When it seemed that there would be no answer, he said indifferently, "It's not worth thanking." I shrugged. If it's not worth it, then it's not worth it. Although I would like to reach the person inside him, and definitely instill in that person at least the ability to accept gratitude and look at the elder branch with an unblinkered eye. I'm afraid to do this will require a very long struggle to reach him and prove my own strength. Nisan, what are we learning at the academy right now? I kicked the dust under my feet. To be on Naruto and Sasuke's team, I need to be the best in theory and have satisfactory grades in practical training. I don't know how it will turn out in practice, but for now that's the plan. I wouldn't want to hand such good teammates over to Sakura, not because she's weak and clanless, and cannon could backfire at the right moment, but because I want to be in control of the situation. Well, as far as I remember. Niji paused, seriously thinking, trying to remember. I smiled slightly, hoping that at least this desire to help was already a small step forward. Excellent progress, considering I've only been here 6 days. For techniques, you should be learning Kawarini, and for theory, something to do with Karakakyu. I don't remember. He finished abruptly. And there's some little dog running by. Is Niji really embarrassed by his soul's beautiful impulses? It's a little funny and a lot sad, because he's embarrassed for a reason. Whether he's embarrassed or not, I don't care, but he shouldn't keep them to himself. If you want to do something, do it, and don't suppress it. Hinata-sama, you study in the left wing. He even gestured. I nodded, indicating I'd taken in the information, and continued watching the dog. Niji, judging by his voice, frowned. Annoyed by my feigned inattention? I can still tell right from left without prompting. I'm in the right wing, if you need me. When your classes are over, wait for me in the courtyard. Entering the academy grounds, I glanced around the building, blowing my cousin a goodbye kiss. Niji's expression visibly contorted, and he bolted. As I'd expected, everything was exactly as it was in canon. And the academy's size had clearly been downplayed, as there were so many children studying there. More than one class for each year group we'd been shown. Hinata? Hinata! Someone with long blonde hair flew up to me and hugged me tightly. I gasped involuntarily. Who the hell was that? Oh, that's it, they've let me go, and if you look at that face with those blue eyes, all questions disappear. Ino stood before me, looking pleased. I was on pretty good terms with her, but I wasn't close, and I was shy and a little intimidated by Yamanaka's activism. I'd better be friends with her, like before, otherwise she'll discover I'm not the same Hinata, and that'll be the end of me. I narrowed my eyes. Where have you been for 3 whole weeks? I miss you already. I didn't know what to say, but then I decided to tell the truth. The official truth. A smile almost appeared on my face, but I suppressed it and only ruffled my hair. How unpleasant it was to feel constrained. It's just, I was sick. And I've forgotten a lot of the details. It's called amnesia. The girl said doubtfully, But, reassured by my nod, she grabbed my hand tightly and smiled. Then let's go, I'll show you where we study, you'll remember something else. Yamanaka ignored my feeble protests that I tried to walk there myself. I simply couldn't resist, the girl's grip on me was too tight. And I had to drag my feet to keep from falling, because Ino ran fast. An active child. About 2 minutes later, I was pushed through a door, and I rubbed my palm. It still hurt from the time Niji showed me exactly what it meant to be in a tenketsu. I looked around the classroom thoughtfully. Just like in an anime, huh? Is it really true that a classroom is assigned to 1 year, and only the teachers change? Or do they not change at all, and we only have Iraka-sensei teaching? I glanced at Ino, sprawled on her desk, beckoning me over, and then my gaze caught another shock of blonde hair. Sorry, Ino, but I'll sit over there. I nodded toward the seat next to Naruto, remaining calm. Ino was all very well, but I didn't like the lack of contact with Naruto at all. So what does that mean? It means I need to try to fix it. I suppressed a sigh. Ino seemed to go through 100 facial expressions, showing her reaction, but in the end she nodded with regal dignity, and I easily rose to the same level as the boy. No one sat with him, even though the desks were designed for 3, which, to me, was downright absurd. It was awkward to write on. Hello, Naruto. I smiled, sitting down next to him. Naruto shifted slightly slowly and nodded, and I took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. My heart was beating wildly. My Hinata's emotions merged with the combined consciousness faster than my memory. Yes, hi, Hinata, Naruto said, confused, and then his eyes lit up with joy. I smiled slightly. It was nice, even if terribly embarrassing, when people looked at you like that. How are you, Naruto? Did you skip class while I was gone? I asked offhandedly, as if we'd known each other for 3 years. If before I couldn't fight for my own happiness, now I will, even though I don't know how. Although this happiness is dubious, with a thin neck, a bandage on his cheek, and huge blue eyes. I gazed at them, and the corner of my lips twitched, not registering some passionate words Uzumaki said. You could fall in love with him just for his eyes, they were cool. Our conversation, which had only just begun, was interrupted by Iraka, loudly announcing roll call to the entire class. I closed my eyes. I wondered if I'd be able to immediately react to a new name. After all, I no longer associated myself with Arena, but I didn't call myself Hinata either. A few more days, but Hayashi remained adamant, despite Jin's gentle attempts to explain that my head might still spin. Aburame Shino, discussing something extremely important at home with his many-legged friends. He doesn't know what to answer. No, you're wrong, he doesn't know how to answer. Ha ha ha. I'm here, and this joke isn't funny, Shino said in his usual manner, amidst the class's laughter. I smiled. The man knows how to keep his cool, even if he's a child. Akimichi Choji. He's not here, he buried himself under a layer of fat. Someone from the back of the class commented cheekily. Choji choked with indignation and turned purple. I frowned. While Shino wasn't offended, Choji was clearly offended by the Joker's comment. And someone with their wicked humor just wouldn't let up. I even felt sorry for those he was making fun of. Thank goodness Naruto had already been named, since I wasn't sure there were any supporters in the class. I lay down on my desk. I'd already found the Joker. All that was left was to answer correctly, since Iraka was so suspiciously ignoring him. Hyuga Hinata. Has this quiet girl ever been here? I squinted, looking at the sky outside the window, and said nothing. It's beautiful, and there are no clouds, just the way I like it. Nothing pressing down from above. Only here it also means heat, which I don't like. I love it. Coolness. Inuzuka Kiba. It's more correct to say Kiba. Voice, Iraka-sensei. I purred with feigned kindness. There was a chortle of carefully suppressed laughter. So why didn't you immediately object to this brainless idiot, guys? Or are shinobi like that, submitting to public opinion, going with the flow, listening to others? Naruto chuckled softly next to me, and Inuzuka's expression twisted. I looked into his eyes indifferently. You hit others where it hurts, and you get it back. How could you? He shouted angrily. I lazily turned to him, and still squinting, shrugged lightly. The class had quieted down a bit, and for some reason Irika wasn't stopping anyone, not Kiba, not me, not the rowdy kids. He's a strange teacher, I think. I glanced around the class, catching every smile and reckless look. Naruto next to me was the same, disheveled, expectant. Everyone hoping for the next line? Excellent, simply excellent. I'll give it to them. Well, that's what I was saying, Sensei. I shook my head sadly, and the class burst into laughter again, louder this time. I finished off my classmates with a slight smile and a patronizing tone. Kiba, why are you looking at me? Ugh, Kiba. Ugh. I think even Sensei coughed, hiding a chuckle, but I wasn't paying attention. He quickly finished the roll call and began the lesson, while I absent-mindedly took notes, barely listening, and thought. If we're learning fighting today, I'm going home. I can't ruin the clan style, and Sensei should know that, so he'll let me go. But if we're learning Kawarimi, as Niji predicted, then I'll happily stay. The technique is useful, very useful indeed. Naruto tried to talk a couple of times in class, but I just glanced at him sideways, impossible to understand due to the lack of a pupil, and quietly advised him not to chatter in class. He went silent for a while, but soon started talking again and, as a result, got hit in the forehead with a piece of chalk. Afterwards, he spent all his time writing down chemistry problems with everyone else, grumbling and constantly rubbing his forehead. I didn't even notice when class ended. I just suddenly heard the bell ring, a sharp, painful piercing sound, and gathered my things. Ino immediately grabbed me like a pincer, and I obediently followed her outside, to the small training ground at the academy. If Yamanaka decided to declare me her best friend instead of Sakura, then kudos to her. Although you can't race me, which is a significant drawback, especially for a child. I'm more calm than open and active. Or does she just want to restore my memories? She's Yamanaka, after all, she should be interested. The conversation with Sensei was short, though I had to bow and scrape for a long time, and make pleading eyes even longer. By the end, I really wanted to kill Irika. I didn't like him. What a strange, strange teacher. Why the hell did he make me memorize leaf taijutsu moves? My style is completely different, and it's easy to ruin. I need smooth, gliding movements, not the sharp attacks they teach at the academy. Sighing, I slung my bag over my shoulder and ran to look for Niji. I need to tell him I've gone back to the clan, otherwise he'll worry. I really hope so. After asking a passing sensei a bit about Niji's class. Hyuga. Yes, that's the genius, so where are you? I briskly made my way to the right classroom and knocked on the door. Niji was sitting at the fourth desk, staring indifferently at the ceiling, not reacting to my appearance. It was more likely that he simply didn't notice, but the noise in the classroom had quieted down. The 11-year-olds looked at me curiously, and the clan members weren't even surprised. Well, it was my sister's first time visiting my brother's class, nothing out of the ordinary. Niage, I called out, drawing out the vowels. My cousin turned around, maintaining an indifferent expression, but then he blinked and raised his eyebrows. We have a Thai lesson, and I don't really feel like sitting on the sidelines, I explained. Niji nodded understandingly. I wouldn't be surprised if he always leaves to practice the clan style. Let's wait for the teacher. I'll ask permission and walk you home, he said calmly. Not seeing Sensei in the classroom, I grimaced and looked around. Ah, that's a familiar hairstyle. Smiling, I walked up to the girl and touched her shoulder. She immediately turned around. Hello? I smiled at her warmly. Could you tell Sensei that Niji and I-san will walk me to the clan quarter? Just not for the whole class, but... Tenten had just started nodding, listening to my speech with growing interest, when Niji covered my mouth with his hand, thanked the girl through clenched teeth, and led me to the entrance of the quarter in silence, only glaring at me hopefully. I was sad. I wanted to have fun, I desperately wanted it, and my cousin had managed to ruin it for me. Chapter 3. Fight. I looked again at the small playground behind the classroom building. There were actually many such playgrounds, but our class had this one. And good thing there was some shade right now. I closed my eyes in pleasure and almost tripped, but Ino caught me. She's a good girl. Sometimes she almost fights with Sakura for a place in the sun, meaning under Sasuke, well, for Sasuke. I yawned. Since Irika-sensei didn't let me go right after class, that meant today we'd either have sparring or practice kawarimi again. I preferred the latter option. The strangest thing was that Irika, after looking around the class and counting us with his eyes, headed straight for me. I tensed. So, he was going to make me fight with taijutsu. A Konoha I don't know? Asked to see kawarimi, even though no one has ever been able to swap with a wooden block? Or something else that would equally cast doubt on a teacher's reputation? No, Irika didn't pull any such tricks, but from his suspicious silence during class arguments, his refusal to explain anything to the slower students, and yet his high standards, I realized that Yumino is as much of a teacher as I am Tsunade. She'll be a busted one, but… Hinata, you're well enough to fight, right? The teacher asked, unexpectedly sympathetic. Ino scurried away with great agility, and I watched her go with a sad look. Friend, how could you? Nevertheless, I answered Irika's question affirmatively. Then try not to knock out the tenketsu with anyone else, okay? He smiled, rubbed his scar, and walked away from me. I chuckled, deciding there was no need for him to know that I couldn't see the tenketsu yet, and wouldn't see it any time soon, and lay down on the grass. The weather was impossibly beautiful, not a cloud in the sky, the sun shining brightly, standing at its zenith, but not so hot that I would collapse from exhaustion. Or is it just my body that's adapted to the heat? I am a future kunoichi, after all. And this is no joke. The illogicality of this world amuses me beyond belief. There are refrigerators and radios here, but the world operates according to a feudal system. And shinobi don't have appendices. I can easily illuminate everyone, even near babies, with the byakugan. There's no hairiness, in awkward places, and so on. The color of their eyes and hair also defies logic, as does the extreme endurance and impenetrability of ninja bodies. I just laugh. Cool! Get up, let's stretch! Irika's voice made me grumble under my breath, and Shikamaru, who was lying down not far from me, grumbled too. We exchanged knowing glances and both lazily went to stretch. I, as always, was sleepy, since Niji and Ko took turns training me. My cousin also trained on me, and Shikamaru was simply born into the Nara clan. The warm-up was light, nothing like what Niji had given me. I sighed, looked sadly at Sensei, and increased the intensity of the workout, ensuring the warm-up had the desired effect and a pleasant warmth spread through my muscles. After what my cousin had done to me, this warm-up seemed laughable. Yumino glanced sideways but said nothing. And then they paired us up. It was a very basic system, winner fights winner, who fights another winner, and so on until only one remains. I looked at Sakura, she looked at me, and we both shrugged. I could have refused the sparring partner Sensei had chosen, but why bother? Sakura didn't see the point. I was confident of victory. It was that simple. But this wasn't our first fight, so I lay down on the grass, plucked a blade of grass, and stuffed it in my mouth. The idol continued right up until Irika announced 2 more names. This time, I caught my own and stood opposite Sakura. Sensei declared battle, Haruno assumed a fighting stance, and I yawned and muttered something like, Byakugan, through my yawn as I formed a seal. The activation time was 9 seconds, but in those 9 seconds, Sakura almost managed to slam her fist into my face. I dodged, hissed when my ear began to throb in protest, and assumed my clan stance. Shoti! I practically purred, letting Haruno turn around after the blow. The activated Byakugan had quite an effect on her, and she missed the first blow, to the chest. I noticed the chakra streaming through her SCC and nonchalantly launched a second blow, to the stomach, but missed. Sakura dodged to the side, clearly trying to catch me from behind, but I dramatically spun around and caught her clenched fist. She tried to kick me, but I easily moved my legs. The class let out an admiring gasp, Sakura broke free, and I hummed a simple tune to myself. If Niji could see me now, he'd hit me in the head. I'm not even fighting, I'm just waving my arms and making everyone admire my Byakugan. While Sakura was rubbing her chest, I put the Byakugan away and winced. Oh, that feeling of being blinded, when my almost 360-degree vision simply disappears. I don't like you so much. What? Sakura finally couldn't help but let out a startled cry. I looked at her and sighed. Ideally, I shouldn't waste time until Haruno's pain from my blow had completely subsided, but chattering is laziness, and I really feel like being lazy right now. The Byakugan gives you a field of view of almost 360 degrees, that's all, I muttered. And what I hit you with was Shoti, the lowest form of our taijutsu. Tenketsu are knocked out much more painfully. I shrugged, activated my dojutsu, and took a step away from Sakura, causing her to miss again. But this time my ear wasn't hurt, and I hit the girl very honestly, first in the side then in the back. When Sakura suddenly collapsed, the training grounds fell silent. Kind-hearted Hinata had given up before, and there hadn't been many fights like this, so my careful fingertips gave the clanless a pause. I, however, didn't hesitate. I glanced around for Shikamaru, lay down next to him, confident he'd chosen the most comfortable spot, and dozed off. Ino woke me up, whispering that after Choji and Shikamaru went out to the makeshift platform, it would be her and I. I simply thanked her and a little later watched Shikamaru collapse back into his seat. He, predictably, had simply lost the fight. I smirked. Perfect tactic, and no one would scold me for that. Yamanaka Ino vs. Hyuga. Hinata, Yumino announced solemnly. I blinked, looking at my opponent, and immediately activated the Byakugan. The sleepiness hasn't gone away yet, sadly. The fight will be harder. And Ino is not Sakura. Ino stood opposite me, immediately transitioning smoothly into a leaf taijutsu stance. The Yamanaka clan doesn't have its own fighting style? Logically, they don't need one. Yamanakas are long-range fighters, not close-quarters ones. I also assumed a Juken stance, sighing. I didn't want to argue or fight with her. My first friend in this world. Ino attacked me first, unleashing a barrage of blows. I blocked them all where necessary, dodging, ducking, jumping back. I didn't want to attack. I was wearing my opponent down now, fighting seriously, not like with Sakura, but I still couldn't block every blow. My ribs were painfully sore, and I tasted blood in my mouth, my lip was cut. Add to that a sore ear, and it became clear why I suddenly grew tired of wearing my opponent down, and went on the attack. A punch to the forehead, Ino ducked. A trip, I backed away. My eyes were starting to sting a little. A punch to the chest, I hit him in the shoulder, Yamanaka staggered, and I followed up with a punch to the left side. Ino stumbled, jerked her hand to her side, and hissed something nasty at me before dropping to her knees. After waiting for Irika to confirm victory, I deactivated my eyes, helped Ino to the mezzanine, saluted her, received a smirk in return. Was it just my imagination, or was she seriously considering whether to make an offended face, and went off to watch the fights? There weren't many opponents left, so it was worth trying to come up with something to counter their taijutsu. Uchiha Sasuke against, Sensei seemed to be thinking. I tried to guess who he would choose, but unexpectedly I was wrong. Uzumaki Naruto. I blinked, then blinked again, and searched for Uzumaki's figure. He was walking towards Sasuke, a determined expression on his face, and I just shook my head. He'll lose. Now, he'll definitely lose, then too. I chuckled, remembering the fight at the Valley of the End, and, as expected, skipped the first part of the duel. And I didn't regret it. Yes, Sasuke had Uchiha clan taijutsu. I couldn't imagine what parts they copied it from, but it looked good. Naruto was too slow, too straightforward. The leaf style was too unattractive. And no matter how much my heart pounded at the mere sight of his enormous blonde head of hair, I was being realistic. Right now, Naruto is a weak technical wreck, a resilient tumbler who, with the right training, could become an excellent ninja. But no one teaches him, and he remains the same. I twitched my fingers, indifferently skipped another battle, staring at the sparse clouds, and then heard my name again. So soon? So few people left? Hyuga Kenta versus Hyuga Hinata. Oh. I stood opposite my distant relative from the branch house, who had hidden the seal behind a bandage, and smiled. Let's see how I stack up against someone other than Niji. My cousin lowers my ego to the ground, so let this Kenta at least raise it. Or leave it at that level. I cast a concentration seal. Well then. I waited for Iruka's nod and began channeling chakra into his eyes, finishing, to my great relief, well before Kenta. So without the seal, we would have been roughly equal, with a slight bias in one direction or another. Byakugan! My voice echoed across the quiet testing ground. Could it be that my classmates were interested? No wonder, a Hyuga fight is something special. The fluidity of movement, the grace, the almost weightless touches, a dance, you might say. Only sometimes deadly. I closed the distance as fast as I could and struck, aiming for his chest, but my blow was gracefully deflected, and Kenta grunted the activation words through his teeth. A semblance of pupils appeared in his eyes, veins bulged, and the color of his eyes changed subtly, but I didn't dwell on it. I struck again, dodged, and deflected the blow. So he was using Shoti too. Kenta's attacks grew more and more violent, and I felt the excitement taking over my consciousness. This wasn't good. This wasn't good, and I wanted to control myself. But the only way to stop the fight was through defeat. There was no way to distract myself and utter a few words. Twisting so hard my spine cracked, I gently poked Kenta in the crook of his elbow, earning him a loud hiss. I immediately jumped. Kenta's not-so-logical opinion was that knocking an opponent down and finishing him off was much easier than trying to hit a moving target, which also deflected blows. I tried to keep my distance from his right arm, which was moving slowly and poorly after my blow. The boy's indignant expression touched me, and my smile infuriated him. Why are you so unrestrained, son of the Hyuga clan? How? It's funny that this is the second time I've been asked this question. It's all clear with Sakura, and with Kenta too. He hadn't seen my training, after all, and couldn't understand what had changed in me in the mere 3 weeks since the clan announced I'd lost my memory. You're weak. Cowardly. I shook my head. Kenta even stopped and deactivated his Byakugan, and I followed suit, gently rubbing first one eye, then the other. I was still vigilant. Shaking my head, I pursed my lips. Like this, in front of everyone, so the students and teachers could hear? During these children's fights? More like kind and generous, I remarked modestly, patting my head. Laughter erupted from the crowd of classmates, and the air around me stopped crackling with tension. Or was that crackling in my ears? I clasped my hands behind my back, formed a concentration seal, and whispered the name of my dojutsu. I was the first to take a step toward my opponent. Kenta struck a blow vague, blurry, into nowhere. Was he just trying to wave it off, so I wouldn't interrupt his Byakugan activation? I deflected the blow, struck him somewhere below the heart, in the liver, jabbed my finger into his solar plexus, and only clenched my teeth as pain seared through my stomach. My chakra instantly became unruly and viscous, and the Byakugan suddenly vanished, but the deed was already done, and Kenta, his eyes rolling back, sank to the ground. I snapped my fingers in front of his face and was satisfied. He was conscious, as he had clearly not jerked away from my hand out of reflex. Hinata, you don't even have to leave, Iruka suggested peacefully. I turned around and saw the unique Uchiha. Sasuke belatedly nodded. A series of options clicked in her head, like invisible fingers twirling a rosary. Sasuke is strong, Sasuke is fast, and he knows enough about my clan's taijutsu to stay away from deceptively gentle touches. He's more confident. He'll be the winner either way, and I don't want to be defeated. There's only one option, and there's Shikamaru looking at me with a lazy sneer. Seriously, what can I show him? Maybe his own technique? I give up, I said, squinting. Oh yes, it's so good there's no sun here. I don't like it, my skin gets red, itchy, and peels too quickly. Nara propped himself up on his elbows to get a better look at the picture, then plopped back down on the grass. And rightly so, I didn't notice anything interesting. Maybe Sasuke's annoyance and a few people's slack jaws. Well, that's not even funny. As soon as I politely bowed to Sasuke, ending the fight, the crowd of girls predictably erupted in shouts of Sasuke Kuyuan! Uchiha followed suit and walked away from his own fan club. I immediately spotted Naruto and walked toward him, my hands in the pockets of my shorts. I was immediately hit by a wave of enthusiasm. I even swayed slightly from the almost tangible energy that hovered around Uzumaki. Hinata! Wow, that was beautiful, Databeo, and how you fought with Kenta! It's just a shame Sakura-chan lost to you. He paused for a second, but then his smile blossomed again. I took a breath and smiled back. And my heart was playing up. But you fight so beautifully, and with Kenta it was just, Databeo, just, very beautiful. Naruto gushed, confused and enthusiastic, while I nodded occasionally and inserted moans of various emotional colors. Sakura-chan, then. It's a shame. And what did you achieve with this, Hinata? Yamanaka appeared next to me, gently nudging me in the side with her elbow. I glanced at her, not intending to turn away from Naruto. A false excuse, easily slipped from my tongue, was invented almost immediately. Didn't you notice the epic expression on our sensei's face? Yamanaka doubled over with giggles, and Naruto grinned too, from ear to ear, so joyfully and warmly that I instantly lost my drowsiness. Kami, how could anyone be like this? In a world of assassins and intrigue, power and knowledge? I exhaled all the air I'd held and peered at his smiling face, bewildered. Naruto, how about studying with me? You won't be able to fight like me, but I'll try to help you improve your grades in all your subjects. I blurted out easily. I grabbed Naruto and Ino by the wrists, and gently pulled them toward the rest of my classmates, who were already heading to class to pack their things and head home. Ino chirped something cheerful and, turning away, fluttered after Irika-sensei, while Naruto walked a few steps automatically, looking at me with wide eyes. Then he suddenly blushed slightly and rushed to hug me, while I could only bury my forehead in his shoulder and not laugh. How easy it was to become a friend of this unusual and strong man. After my memorable proposal, Naruto became too much. He was everywhere, at the academy, afterward, and almost always in my thoughts. Ko looked disapprovingly, Niji scolded my daydreaming, but I felt at ease. At some point, I woke up completely whole. Not a wall between Rina and Hinata, but a single person, and I still couldn't shake it. It was wonderful, to feel one thing without being torn apart, to remember everything I needed to without rushing to find information in my own labyrinthine mind. Niji once told me during training that I reminded him of myself again. Before he got sick, I just shrugged and gently poked him in the ribs with Shuryai. Yes, softer again, but still with my sense of humor. Yes, willing to slightly alter myself for my loved ones, but still loving my freedom. Yes, kinder, but still not always showing it everywhere or always. But whole, with a bright gray gaze and a soul in the dark, as Ino so aptly put it, having stopped comparing everyone to flowers for a while. Ko became a mentor, Niji a good if nervous friend. Hanabi would occasionally smile when she caught my eye, and Naruto just was. And it was great. It was easy to open up to him, since he sometimes didn't even notice the shields anyway. On me, on Niji, on Sasuke, who somehow became interested in the noise coming from the abandoned training grounds. Yamanaka smiled mysteriously, her blue eyes wide, and interacted easily with Naruto, completely unafraid of the fact that she wore no masks. All her emotions, bright, changing, unexpected in their power, were completely genuine. Well, Hinata, Naruto drawled, ignoring the scowling Niji. His cousin was sitting in a tree and glaring at Uzumaki, with whom we were hiding from the scorching sun under the spreading branches. Well, show me the Byakugan. I shook my head and even waved my hands, insisting for the umpteenth time that his wish was nonsense. There's nothing beautiful, or even attractive about the Byakugan. Eyes imbued with such power look just as good. It was a stupid wish that had been lingering in Naruto's mind for a week now. Almost since the moment I'd quietly forgotten about my birthday, caught up in my new, active life. Joyful? I wouldn't say so, as there were plenty of complications and misunderstandings, but my days certainly weren't peaceful. Naruto got really angry then, said that such dates should be mentioned, that it was definitely not worth forgetting, and terribly displeased, he disappeared somewhere. I didn't bother and decided to simply forget about the incident the next time we met, but that wasn't the case. When Niji caught me and offered to go straight to training, I agreed. When he wouldn't even let me carry my school bag, Naruto and I had seen each other right after the academy. I tensed up. When he unexpectedly quickly let go and left, I didn't even know what to think. And I didn't need to think. As soon as I entered my room, consumed by conflicting thoughts, Naruto and Ino, who looked strikingly similar at the time, pounced on me with hugs. Yamanaka placed a cake on the coffee table. Naruto didn't know what to do with the gorgeous flower, and I almost cried like a little girl. The day was vaguely remembered. One minute we'd finally found the vase, the next we'd be scouring the entire block looking for Niji. One minute we'd be noisily and cheerfully drinking tea, and the next Naruto was passionately proving something to his cousin, whose hands were shaking slightly, a sign of strong emotion. The next Uzumaki was finally dragging us into his beloved Ichiraku, and the next Niji was smiling faintly, finally relaxing. About halfway home, Sasuke was spotted, but we didn't pay him any attention, while Nisan's lips trembled for a long time, so impressed was he by the face of the local avenger. But now I was denying the beauty of my dojutsu in every possible way, and the bird sitting on the tree, Niji, was frowning more and more. Everyone says no, but you show them. Naruto drawled in the best traditions of boring fairy tales, but not so confidently. Could it be that even Uzumaki Naruto can doubt his own decisions? Tell me, where did the last mammoth die? Well, you won't like it, I replied wearily, collapsing onto the grass and mindlessly staring at the treetop. Niji's blue boot was in view, looking cheerful and surreal against the green background. I don't want to, I'm too lazy. Just show him. Niji groaned, very convincingly. I looked at his boot again. Don't you really like the Byakugan that much? I don't see anything wrong with it, like you're talking about. Now I saw not just his boot, but the whole thing. My cousin had decided to jump down to our sinful earth. The coming of the Messiah. I sighed and sat down to form the seal. 8 seconds of concentration, and suddenly my veins were bulging, my pupils were visible, and capillaries were dimly visible in my eyes. Niji wisely moved away so as not to embarrass me, only dramatically rolling his eyes behind Naruto's back. And Uzumaki himself immediately climbed up to me to examine the dojutsu more closely. I wonder if he'll fawn over Sasuke like that too, just to see the Sharingan? After the allotted 7 minutes and 2 more, I exhaled painfully, and Naruto noticed it immediately. Amazing sensitivity in some things, and an equally amazing opposite in others. The boy jerked away from me, and I simply sighed in relief and put away my dojutsu, closing my eyes. Good. Nothing burns, peace and quiet. It's just a shame it's hot outside, but in the shade it's not scary. Everything okay? Naruto asked worriedly. I smiled. There was no need to burden him with the rules of using the Byakugan. He didn't need it. Of course. I lied easily, hugging Naruto, resting my forehead on his shoulder. He's very wise in some things, after all, he'll see through my lies. Chapter 4. Clan. Hayashi was waiting for me in a completely unfamiliar room. What was even stranger was that it wasn't Niji, or even Ko who had brought me here, but only a vaguely familiar member of the junior branch, with whom my family ties were close to zero. I looked suspiciously at my father, but he merely nodded to the seat across from him. I didn't argue, simply sat ceremoniously at the tea table, straightened my back, and after a moment, picked up the cup Hayashi handed me. It seemed the serious conversation I was desperately trying to avoid was about to begin. Why am I hanging out with a Jinchuriki? Why the hell have I changed so much? What's with this more or less warm relationship with Niji, who couldn't stand me a couple of months ago? And most importantly, how can I answer all these questions without screwing anyone over or giving away anything? I sipped a little, calmly waiting for Hayashi to start the conversation. He invited me, and he got to speak first. "How's your memory, Hinata?" He suddenly asked something I hadn't expected. It was easy to keep my expression straight, so I simply set the cup down on the table with a soft thud. "I don't want to drink, but I'll slowly pour the cup down, as I should. She finally came back to me about a week ago." I smiled thinly. "Are we going all in?" "All in, because I really don't want to spend too much time drinking tea with Hayashi. It's better to be with Hanabi. My little sister has recently started to thaw out, and I saw no point in not helping her with that. A human, with all their emotions and mistakes, is 100 times better than a soulless doll." "But you didn't call me here for that, right, father?" I raised an eyebrow. We were silent for a moment, and Hayashi took an almost imperceptible sip and carefully placed his cup on the table. He folded his hands in his lap. He looked indifferently somewhere in my direction, but I still couldn't figure out, was he looking at me or at the wall behind me? "The pupil, I need the pupil. Your association with the Jinchuriki is undesirable for our clan and could prove dangerous to you," he said dispassionately. I raised my eyebrows in silent surprise, and Hayashi understood me correctly. He chuckled, nodded to himself, but began to explain. "Jinchuriki are those who harbor a demon within themselves. The fourth sealed the Kyubi in the boy so that the village could survive, but he's dangerous." My eyes were half closed, and my hands reached for the cup, and I took a sip automatically. If I think I don't know anything then. Dangerous then. It's unlikely my father would lie to me. That's not his style. More likely, he simply twisted the truth so it looked like a lie, and then told me so. The thought that the mischievous boy with the bright eyes could be dangerous didn't even cross my mind. "He's not dangerous, it's the Kyubi," I said softly. "I just need to convince Hayashi that forcing anyone's opinion on me, even his own, is a bad idea. Because I won't give in, and why waste words? I may not see the Tenketsu, but the chakra Naruto is always in the same state and isn't hostile. So why should he be dangerous? It's unlikely the Kyubi will escape, after all, it was sealed by the fourth. His wife was an Uzumaki, and it's unlikely the Yondaime missed the opportunity to expand his knowledge of Fuinjutsu." I kept silent about the fact that the chakra Naruto's chakra was strikingly different from other people's, and it wasn't even about its quantity, element, or yin-yang bias, it was simply different. I still can't figure out what that means, but since everything is fine, and Naruto, albeit hesitantly, switches places with the wooden block, there's no reason to panic. The Kyubi won't escape, but the fox is cunning and could very well manage to release its chakra into the outside world. Hayashi countered. His face and voice were unreadable, so I took another sip, hiding my eyes behind my bangs. And even a small drop of its chakra could harm those near the Jinchuriki. It's not for nothing that the Kyubi is called the most powerful Bijou. Then why hasn't it happened yet? I don't believe, father, that a beast can defeat Fuinjutsu. I shook my head. And I'm not afraid of him. Niji is always with me, believe me, he can help if something does happen. And don't forget that a Jinchuriki is not a demon. A Jinchuriki is, first and foremost, a human. Hayashi thoughtfully twirled the cup in his hands, and then nodded to something of his own. "I see you can't be convinced." He paused. I closed my eyes. "No, father, you can't be convinced." "Then the clan will take care of it." After pausing for a moment, I finished my tea in one gulp and rose. Words of gratitude for the tea, a ceremonious nod in response, a bow. I left the unfamiliar room thoughtful, but not the least bit tense. So what a clan? The purest Hyuga blood may flow in my veins, but spiritually I'm a half-breed. And I'm sure that will help me someday. It wasn't for nothing that I was the one who defeated little Hinata, and didn't just leave her my memories. The sun was already showing evening, and I suddenly turned not toward my room, but toward the estate's exit. I needed to think of something, because easy as it was, they wouldn't just let me go unbranded. It was a bit of a shame, of course, that Hayashi had decided to do this, but I'd never doubted his moral character. After a couple of targets pierced with throwing iron, Niji appeared on the training ground. A sullen, angry Niji. Even though I was lost in thought, I noticed him immediately. My back was burning from his gaze, and I had no choice but to turn around and wave at him cheerfully, ripping a kunai from its wooden handle. I was in no hurry to speak. Niji was too emotional to say anything without being caught. While I was wondering why I thought my cousin was angry, I had never seen his face more indifferent. My brother was the first to lose it, grabbing my hand and squeezing my wrist. I obediently let go of the shuriken I was about to throw. Well, no, then no, why so nervous? A meeting of the clan, Niji hissed through his teeth. I nodded. Yeah, a clan meeting. They'll put me on trial. It's a shame I don't have a lawyer, and I won't. You understand, they'll just stamp you with the seal of submission, and that's it? And bye-bye free will. He unclenched his fingers, and I massaged my wrist. I love freedom, and I won't let anyone take it away from me. On the other hand, if I'd submitted to Hayashi back then, I wouldn't have had freedom either. I have a plan, I said, waving my hand confidently and looking at the sky. The sun, the best hour, told me it was around 8 o'clock. And tomorrow I need to be fresh and without dark circles under my eyes, or they'll grab me and never let go, those cowardly jackals. You mean improvisation? Niji asked sarcastically. I shook my head and confidently walked away from the clan training grounds. We're going to the library. I rolled my eyes, noticing my cousin's relief, and explained my thought. We need to find information about consorts, because I know almost nothing about them, and that's not right. Niji choked and muttered a curse under his breath, but that was all he had to do to show his indignation. It's nice that he doesn't pester me with advice on who I should marry. I swear, I wouldn't be able to stand it. But you have to be patient, otherwise it's all over. I wasn't at all surprised to notice several people with indifferent postures and piercing eyes on my way to the food. A little later, in the vast room, I was met with equally piercing, assessing gazes. It was unlikely that any of the Hyuga clan would disobey their own clan leader, who also happened to be my father, and they were looking at me with curiosity, too. The elders, my father, and Hanabi, the closest relatives from the junior branch to me, were, for the same reason, the most influential in the clan. And everyone's watching and waiting. I shrugged, seemingly indifferent. What did I care how they looked at me, right? Let them not wait, but ask questions, try to coerce me. I came here to answer and fight back against the collar and the cage. Hayashi began, the elders joined in, Hanabi sat staring at the floor, and the younger branch remained silent. I suddenly felt such gratitude towards them that I could barely maintain an impartial expression. Apparently, the fact that I never used the seal and never belittled them played a role in my little war against the clan. Why are you so against me interacting with the Jinchuriki? I suddenly asked with interest. Hayashi froze mid-sentence, and the familiar Benjiro narrowed his eyes slyly. It was with great difficulty that I managed to feign polite interest. Because he's a beast, he's dangerous, the old man replied in an unexpectedly harsh voice. This didn't bother me, however. Really? A tone of incredulity entered her voice, her posture shifted slightly, her eyebrows raised slightly. And I thought the Uzumaki clan's endurance, resistance to all forms of impact, and immense strength, including spiritual, were true. It's no wonder we have something like that in our library. And I raised my voice, as they clearly wanted to interrupt me. And here's something else to think about. Don't we need fresh blood in the clan, especially Uzumaki? I hasten to remind you that their children always inherited the other parent's enhanced genome, and often even enhanced it. So, which is better, wallowing in the swamp or letting clean water flow in? I think a Hyuga clan consort would be preferable. I practically purred the last words. Heh. I'm not even 11, and I can already cause such a ruckus in my clan that no one could even dream of. It's funny. I folded my trembling hands onto my knees and straightened my back. Now all I could do was wait. They wouldn't let me get another word in, just like the others who hadn't reached Chunin. Although Niji was up to something and whispering to his. I bit my lip. Anything but the seal. Anything but that damn caged bird. An hour later, I was able to stand and bow to everyone present, feeling my heart pounding wildly in my chest. Hayashi's words, indifferent and cold, raced through my head, jumbled and confused. In the senior branch. Approved, the future consort, secret from the village elite. No seal. No seal. I felt a multitude of eyes on the back of my head, on my back, and also approval, curiosity, annoyance, anger, interest surging from all sides. And so much more, I had to squint and try to distract myself with something else. So it's no surprise that, as I quickly headed to my own room, I didn't even hear Niji. He touched my shoulder, but I stopped and flinched. I turned to him, smiled weakly, and theatrically pressing the back of my hand to my forehead, staggered. My cousin jerked to catch me, but I, blinking innocently, remained where I was. My raspberry isn't blooming for you. I stuck my tongue out at him. The withdrawal from the prolonged tension was coming on in spurts, my hands were shaking, my eyes were darting, and I wanted to laugh. Long and hard. Hysteria? You have no idea how. I suddenly shook my head seriously, pressing my hands to my chest. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, and I tried to suppress the unnatural mirth. The last thing I needed was hysteria. No, it was possible, of course, but not in anyone's company. Not for me. Niji agreed easily. Sleep? He asked sympathetically. I blinked at him, then nodded. Sleep was what I desperately needed right now, and Shinigami, I only woke up a couple of hours ago. This shock was worth 2 sleepless nights, so I'll sleep long and soundly. If only I could eat first. I licked my lips and headed toward the kitchen, beckoning Niji to follow me. He definitely hadn't eaten anything since morning either. When Hayashi showed up, I nearly fainted from surprise. Fortunately, I still had that ability. My father. In person. And outside the Hyuga district, no less. Niji and Ino seemed to have the same thoughts, as they looked at my dad with incomprehension, their gazes unfocused. Naruto, with a philosophical expression, tried to make the leaf move along his hand. It was jerky, which didn't suit him at all. Yes, chakra control, that's how it is, very problematic. And it was even more annoying for him to see that Ino, Niji, and I were all effortlessly moving that damn leaf all over our bodies. Cousin even had 3. Couldn't you come in? I looked sadly at the empty seat next to Ino. The sunny clearing we'd long ago chosen for our get-togethers was very cozy. It would also be easy to escape unnoticed, simply disappearing into the forest of Konoha Park that surrounded it. Well, it doesn't matter anymore anyway. You scared the Uchiha. Niji grumbled, then smirked. Ino froze, slowly turning in his direction, and I covered my face with my hand. Naruto, in a fit of anger, threw the paper away with a single jolt of chakra and stared at the beginning of the performance. Although, why am I saying that? Everything is just fine, that bastard is gone. Just because you don't like Sasuke doesn't give you the right to insult him. Ino hissed angrily. Naruto, like a fan of some badminton-like game, turned his gaze to Niji. I fumbled for a small pebble on the ground and threw it at Yamanaka. She instantly came to, glanced briefly at my father, and tossed her long blonde hair over her back. We'll talk later, she drawled promisingly. My cousin nodded. Naruto sighed, crossing his legs in the lotus position, and Hayashi looked at our friendly group with obvious skepticism. I instantly played the good girl, smiling innocently and making cute eyes. It's not me, and the horse isn't mine. I live in the house on the edge. What are you even talking about? What did my father want from me? I'm taking you to the clan quarter, Hayashi said calmly, literally guiding Niji back into his seat with a glance. No, your presence isn't needed, nephew. I rose from my seat, wondering what this man could possibly want from me. It was unlikely he simply wanted to see his beloved daughter, disrupting the carefully crafted atmosphere of kindness and peace with which we had lured Sasuke. Wary, like some small predatory animal, the Uchiha gave us all strange glances, but sat nearby, not participating in the conversations, merely listening. Occasionally he'd chime in with a few remarks, but always to the point and with much needed meaning. He mockingly spat at his cousin, saying that dojutsu needed to be given a day or two of rest every now and then to allow it to recover and strengthen, when he grumbled about his eyes hurting. He casually advised Ino to stop moaning about her earth element, and instead learn techniques that would help it hold an opponent in place. He literally showered Naruto with leaflets, surprisingly silently, but Niji, Ino, and I explained in unison what kind of chakra control exercise could be done with each leaflet. I hadn't gotten any advice yet, but I'd seen Sasuke glare at me thoughtfully, chuckling at the academy, and almost playfully knocking me down during academy battles, even though one of his arms was completely immobilized. I hissed and squinted like an angry cat, but only managed to reach his mockingly raised eyebrows. And it was terrible. More than ever, I understood Naruto's desire to surpass Uchiha, to become stronger, to show what he was capable of, because, despite everything, Sasuke was incredibly infuriating. And how did Ino manage to fall in love with him? "Why did you come for me, Odo-san?" I asked, following my father into the clan quarter. My stomach twisted into a tight knot of foreboding, especially when Hayashi looked at me so promisingly and he said nothing. I closed my eyes, evened out my breathing, and tried to calm down. "Just be calm, Hinata. He's not going to cut you, is he?" "Retreat." Hayashi walked leisurely, but out of the corner of his eye he saw Hinata, walking beside him, roll her eyes for a second. She was significantly shorter than him, and what for Hayashi was considered a leisurely pace, for the girl meant a quick stride. On the other hand, how foolish would the clan heir look, practically running after her father like a devoted dog. Yet somehow his daughter managed to keep pace with him and look calm and composed. Not bad, the man mused, pleased to see his daughter no longer a wimp. It was strange, after her illness, to suddenly discover that Hinata had lost her memory, but at the same time, had acquired a completely different personality. As Hayashi saw it, the exchange was equal. There was nothing important or vital in his daughter's memory, nothing that couldn't be learned again. And then Hinata suddenly softened again, and her movements once again acquired that unique fluidity that seemed to be inherent to all members of his clan, and seemingly only to Hinata. "She's back," he sighed with disappointment, seeing the familiar gesture of two clasped index fingers. But not her, Hayashi realized, seeing the serenity in the almost colorless eyes opposite him. A few days later, he opened his eyes to all the strange things happening to his daughter and nephew. And while he was already more or less familiar with Hinata, the changed Niji came as a shock. With a forced sincerity on his face, he dragged his cousin back to the mansion, and then held her hand as she hopped on one leg towards the medics. She twisted her ankle. He sourly watched the tankette trying to make out Hinata and would only cover his eyes when she loudly complained, saying his presence was ruining the training grounds' aura. He spent less time at the training grounds, training alone, and more time with Hinata and the Yamanaka girl. Hayashi thought this was a great chance to become related to the mentalists, but an overheard joke about an Uchiha and Inoichi's daughter disproved everything. Communication with the Yamanaka clan's Heim, minor squabbles with the Inazuka Kiba, a shared laziness with Shikamaru Nara. Hayashi had been keeping an ever-increasing interest in his daughter through the junior branch members who were also guarding the princess, until one message forced him to abandon his spy games and take extreme measures. Why the hell does his daughter adore Uzumaki? Naruto, although not a rootless one, but a poor hooligan Jinchuriki? The conversation had yielded no results, and Hayashi, gritting his teeth, announced a clan meeting. His own wisdom and ability to read the mood from the slightest movements, without which he would have long since ceased to be the clan leader, showed that Hinata wasn't even worried, only glad to be spared the unnecessary conversation. And so he made his decision. He didn't understand words. There would be action. He would simply show his daughter that there was no need to struggle, at least in matters concerning the well-being of the clan. and he announced his decision to the clan, preparing a speech that would seal Hinata's submission and then, at the last moment, yank her out from under the sword of Damocles. But Hinata unexpectedly outdid him, and watching his daughter's slightly trembling hands, Hayashi had no choice but to reserve his arguments and vehemently oppose them, so that everyone else would begin to view Hinata's decision as a worthy prospect. Experience with intrigue and ruling a seemingly indifferent clan was incredibly helpful. And now he gallantly led Hinata into the clan quarter first, clearly seeing her running through her options. Test her strength? No, they were already past the point where they could turn off toward the training grounds. Give a lecture? No, then he would simply wait for her at home. Something urgent? Then why were they walking so leisurely? What? What? What are we going to do now? Hinata purred, narrowing her eyes, but Hayashi didn't even bat an eyelash. At moments like these, his daughter reminded everyone of a cat, a deceptively gentle predator, but the man knew how to rid himself of obsessive images with the power of desire alone. It was like breaking a genjutsu. You must learn not only how to fight, but also how to speak, act, and even remain silent, Hayashi finally drawled, noticing Hinata's thoughtful nod. He understands, that's good. Then the corner of her mouth suddenly twitched, but she said nothing. Teachers in etiquette, Siamen, embroidery. I've long overlooked this layer of knowledge you need, but I hope you can at least catch up with Hanabi. The eldest daughter nodded, but it seemed as if she was not really listening to the words being in herself. Right now? She asked absent-mindedly, to which Hayashi chuckled affirmatively. I guess I'll only have time for sleep, food, and training, right? She asked matter-of-factly, and Hayashi raised his eyebrows in silent surprise. Did she really think he'd pass up the opportunity to ally with the Yamanaka, to plant someone from the clan and a pet Jinchuriki on the Uchiha? Now that two of those intended benefits were possible, it would be foolish to pass them up. Of course not. Hayashi nodded toward the door where that memorable conversation over tea had taken place. Go ahead. Your skills in the tea ceremony and simply understanding hidden meanings leave much to be desired. He turned and left, followed by his daughter's shocked gaze, and smirked slightly. Oh yes. Now it was clear why Hinata loved to break people's molds, to savor that feeling of shocked gaze and someone else's helplessness in the face of your actions. You don't get to do that often, especially for him, the clan leader, but it was a pleasant experience. Chapter 5. Water. Haiku makes me want to spit. I honestly admitted to my friends, flopping down on the grass and blissfully turning my face to the sun. Red shone through my closed eyelids, and purple-orange-green circles danced in my eyes. And then there are these teachers. I sighed. Sitting next to me were my favorite kids, not annoying and tedious teachers, and my happiness knew no bounds. In this perfect clearing, nothing weighed me down. The sky was right there, the sun was close, and there was no ceiling being erected and lovingly pushed into it. There was no ceiling, there was freedom, something I was willing to give my life for. Perhaps that's why I was throwing cannon to hell, changing and reshaping relationships and, a little, characters. Knowing what would happen next was good, but feeling like you were creating your own destiny was even better. Besides, I didn't want to rely on the events of manga and anime. There were too many inconsistencies there. It was my 4th month of classes, I'd already celebrated my 11th birthday, and I couldn't wait for Niji to graduate from the academy so I could congratulate him. A disheveled but peaceable Sasuke sat somewhere nearby, close to Naruto and Ino. He loved Ino because she was a good person, and Naruto acted as a buffer between him and Niji. A sweet buffer, the kind who genuinely couldn't understand why these two geniuses were fighting and even tried to reconcile them. I just rolled my eyes. Competition. Write them a poem, they'll be touched, and then they'll tell your father your training is over. No big deal. Sasuke snorted dismissively at my howls. I shielded myself from the sun with my hand and opened my eyes, looking thoughtfully at the Uchiha. Do you think it will help? I asked rhetorically. Although it's worth a try anyway. It'll be one less lesson. I wonder if he just came up with this thanks to his genius, or if Itachi, who was supposedly the clan's heir, had similar problems? I yawned and decided not to dwell on the past, so I crawled over to Naruto, trying not to get my clothes dirty on the grass, and lay down next to him. Neji and Sasuke didn't react, but Ino slyly glanced at Naruto, who was blushing. I was simply enjoying the sunshine, and Naruto was making me enjoy it even more. He's so good at showing emotions. My relationship with Uzumaki was a bit strange, a bit lopsided, and very warm and trusting, on his end, for sure, while I kept quiet about my crush. Honestly, we're 11 years old, and this would all seem simply stupid. Not until adulthood. Here, that only meant achieving Chunin status. No way, but 11 years. I still laugh when Sasuke's fan club chases him all over Konoha, even if they're afraid to venture into the Uchiha district. No, that's so stupid. But Naruto's shouts, inviting Sakura on a date, weren't funny, they just ruined the mood. It's a good thing they almost never happen now. Straining my memory, I still can't remember the last time. Or is it just because I'm constantly trying to forget such moments? It will help, Ino assured me, carefully hiding her laughter. I did that a long time ago. I muttered something grateful and froze completely. I didn't want to think, twitch, jump, or go anywhere, especially not anywhere, so I simply savored the peace, the most infrequent occurrence in my frantic life. Constantly running somewhere, doing something, straining my eyes so hard that my CNS aches for hours, my Byakugan refusing to activate, my palms raw from training, my tongue blistered, obediently smiling at the etiquette teachers and saying the right things in the right voice. A couple of weeks later, Neji graduated from the academy, and a friendly crowd of 4 of us made our way to his Hatayate ceremony, which, in fact, took place that same evening. After all, we had to please the parents and make the children believe in their own exceptionalism. This mostly applies to clanless and hereditary shinobi. I could literally see Niji's emotion and joy at our appearance, though he merely quirked the corners of his lips and cast a withering glance at Sasuke. The Uchiha responded with a serene half-smile, for which I should be grateful to Ino. It was she who stepped on the boy's foot and nudged him with her elbow, subtly hinting that my cousin shouldn't ruin his graduation. I then pulled the Avenger aside and earnestly asked him not to comment on the missions. Sasuke blinked, raised a mocking eyebrow, but nodded, and I calmed down. This one doesn't break promises, which meant he'd be gloating over my brother's potato weeding in silence and in his thoughts. The days flew by. All I could do was try to grasp everything. The new knowledge from the teachers Hayashi had provided me, the training, the time spent with my loved ones. At one point, Ino, the most attentive one, sounded the alarm, noticing the dark circles under my eyes, and I obediently agreed to sleep instead of attending another training meeting. Then I picked up that frantic pace again, feeling the coil begin to tighten. Graduation is the start, war is the end. A simple and ridiculously silly poem I'd composed swirled in my head. Whoever doesn't make it in time loses. You need to learn to listen not only to us, but to Iruka-sensei as well, I concluded after Naruto had happily demonstrated tree walking for me. He also talked a lot about chakra control, but you only listened to the lectures I or Neji give you. If you listened to Yumino, you would have been walking on trees a long time ago. Iruka-sensei isn't very interesting, Databeo. Naruto pouted. I shrugged. What difference did it make? We'll still be teaching him, and Naruto knows that perfectly well. Or rather, we won't be teaching him for a while. Let him try it himself. Information won't be handed to him on a silver platter all the time. I twitched the corner of my lips, trying not to smile at the ridiculous expression Naruto had on his face, but I quickly looked away. The last thing I needed was to blush like a 5th grader. The tender love for Naruto, inherited from my past self by the present me, was blooming and fragrant. I didn't stifle it, didn't try to nourish it, on the contrary. I simply did what I wanted and what didn't cross the line. Sit or even lie down next to him? Please. Hug him? Okay. But running my fingers through someone else's hair or even touching a strand to see what Naruto's shaggy locks felt like, that was out of the question. A river caught my eye, and I suddenly narrowed my eyes, struck by a sudden idea. Generally speaking, every training ground simply must have water, as there are shinobi whose element is suiton, and it's never a bad idea to practice walking or even fighting on water. A river is very convenient, as you can build several training grounds at once without the hassle of creating artificial lakes. Naruto, how long have you been able to walk on walls, trees, and the like? I asked. Naruto grunted affirmatively. And how about jumping high? I learned to jump a long time ago, Databeo. Naruto waved his hand and smiled brightly. And walking on trees, only a week ago. And then I spent another week learning to fall less. He added more quietly, but I only caught fragments of the phrase. However, it was clear without the explanation why I didn't even know for a week that Naruto had mastered the next level of chakra control. I figured, rubbing the bridge of my nose, and thought. A week. Knowing Naruto, all he'd done this week was train, which meant the skill was more or less ingrained in his head, and more importantly, it was close to being a reflex. Shinobi adapt very quickly, situations happen. So, it was time to let him out on the water. Even if he splashed, he'd float. Naruto could swim. I'd rather not get his clothes wet, but I didn't want to send him home for a change of clothes. Uzumaki lives far away. Okay, take off your shirt, I said, smiling at his horrified look. Or you can leave it on so it gets wet. We'll be walking through water, after all. I'm not suggesting you take off your pants. I'm afraid my observers will misunderstand me and drag you off to some bushes to teach you a lesson. Ano. Why would they drag him away, Hinata? Naruto asked curiously, but didn't take off his shirt. It could be one of three things: either Shikamaru woke up inside him, or he decided that if he got wet, it would be for everyone, or he was embarrassed. I'll bet my Byakugan on third place. Well, seduction, violent acts against the princess of the Hyuga clan. I shrugged, then raised my eyebrows meaningfully. If you know what I mean. Naruto blushed and darted toward the riverbank, and I followed him, quietly chuckling. Yeah, if you end any sentence with, if you know what I mean, and wiggle your eyebrows like that, the effect is simply astounding. And for some reason, everyone's thoughts go somewhere perverse. I suddenly imagined Lee, with his huge eyebrows, saying that, and I almost fell over from the sudden fit of laughter, but luckily I managed to keep my balance. I approached Naruto, still giggling hysterically, but already trying to calm down. I cleared my throat, pushing the new attack deeper, and tried to remember what it was all about. Oh yeah, water walking. Teaching Naruto to walk on water. Exactly. So, I almost burst into another. Hee hee. I collected my thoughts and continued calmly. Walking on water is another exercise in chakra control. And like walking on vertical surfaces and upside down, it's a very important skill in the art of shinobi. To walk on the surface of water, or even just to support yourself, you need to direct chakra to your feet, or your hands, your knees, or somewhere else, depending on what you're supporting yourself on, and distribute it evenly not only throughout your entire body, but also give something to the water so it supports you. Also evenly. Many people make mistakes here, sinking ankle deep, knee deep, but remaining standing. Those are the most common mistakes. I stood in the water and walked about 2 meters from the shore, turned to Naruto, and put my hands on my hips. He looked at me like I was some kind of messiah, even though he knew for a fact that shinobi could walk on water. I was embarrassed, but only briefly, and after a few seconds I continued. It's a bit more expensive than walking through trees, but I don't need to tell you that. I shook my head. Niji and I once estimated how much Naruto had. Chakra, forcing him to do kawarimi until he felt like he had no more chakra left, and became so despondent that we could barely force ourselves to train that day. No matter how brilliant my brother was, no matter how good we both were at chakra control, Naruto had us beat. He had not just a lot of chakra, but a hell of a lot, and I could only bite my nails in envy. I'm sure my cousin had the exact same reaction. Let me help you first, okay? I'll try to make the water next to me hold someone, and you stand there and remember the sensation. Try it yourself sometimes. But I'll get too tired holding both you and myself for too long. I grinned. Naruto nodded and, like a little cutie, waded into the water. He'd been walking along the bottom before me, groping the surface with his hands, but about half a meter away, he froze, his mouth slightly open in surprise, and quickly pulled himself up into the water, standing next to me. The sight was so surreal that I even closed my eyes. I've been living here for over a year, and I still can't get used to this abnormality, this feeling of falsehood on the tip of my tongue. And although I'm convinced every time it's just my imagination, overwhelmed by fatigue or lack of sleep, the fear was there. Because I'd gotten used to it, become addicted, and the sense of wholeness that had brought me peace and tranquility had faded and dulled. A strange world and a strange life had taken hold and swirled me, making me forget that none of this was mine. But I shouldn't forget, because otherwise I'd forget the past, and it needs to be remembered. The boy grabbed my sleeve, and all extraneous thoughts instantly flew from my head. I estimated the approximate depth by eye and immediately calmed down, chest deep, neck deep at most, so there was nothing to fear. Getting wet, however, was quite easy. I carefully peeled Naruto off me and gestured broadly for him to begin. I had enough chakra for a long time. This was just a control exercise, albeit one made more difficult by Naruto, but my physical strength might not be enough. I was constantly releasing chakra, and someday, most likely soon, from such a constant, especially intense, release of chakra, Kirakuki will start to hurt. Naruto stepped aside, frowned, and almost fell into the water, only managing to jump back at the last moment. I sighed, thinking I'd get splashed anyway, and sat down in the water in the lotus position. The exercise hadn't been too much of a challenge yet, but after 40 minutes, I realized my ears were ringing, very, very quietly. You might not notice, but the fact remains. Noticing Naruto standing in the water for 3 seconds before splashing back in, I closed my eyes and thought. So, a little less than a year until graduation, and Sasuke was still an Avenger. Not that I particularly cared, but Ino was incredibly dear to him. Naruto had already acknowledged the Uchiha as his friend, and I absolutely didn't want to see the battle at the Valley of the End. Only Neji was still grinning at Sasuke, although he'd probably gotten used to him. An hour later, the monotonous ringing in my ears was already loud and constant, and my head was pounding as if I hadn't slept for days. My chakra channels itched terribly, and I couldn't do anything about it. I only clung to Naruto's emotions to distract myself from the sensations of my own body. Uzumaki was now walking with some confidence, but he kept sinking ankle-deep, knee-deep, and still couldn't reach the bottom. I cursed my terrible health and poor stamina and endured. By the 4th hour, Naruto had grown tired and walked proudly to the shore, waving at me. I nodded slowly, stood up, feeling the water dripping off me, and walked toward him. Yes, Naruto had splashed me all over. I wasn't mistaken about that. The journey through the water was a squeak, but I made it, and then barely managed to keep my balance on the ground. Who knew that distributing my chakra through the water a few dozen centimeters away would be so difficult and costly? Hinata! I turned my tired gaze to Naruto, and he grabbed me again. I closed my eyes. Your nose is bleeding, Databeo, Hinata, Uzumaki said in a terrified voice. I nodded mechanically, raised my hand to my nose, and touched it. I admired the red streaks on my fingers. I closed my eyes again, and suddenly feeling a heaviness in my head, grabbed Naruto by his soaking wet t-shirt to keep from fainting on the hard ground. I only managed to fall harder on top of him, so that he would definitely catch me, and smear my lips across his cheek. The second thing, completely by accident. I woke up feeling anything but rested, completely exhausted. My eyes were too tight to open, and my body was just begging to lie in a warm bed for a little while longer, and then some more, and some more. It took a tremendous amount of effort to say no to myself and start showing any signs of life, but I managed. Neji was dozing next to my bed. After half-heartedly protesting that, what the hell was a guy doing in a girl's room without her permission? I struggled to prop myself up on my elbow and tugged at my cousin's sleeve. He immediately came to and with one push laid me back down on the pillow, and I was glad to let him go. Tell me, I yawned mid-sentence and buried my nose in the cold part of the pillow. I wondered if it would be too impudent to ask Niji to turn it over to the cool side? What should I tell you? My cousin didn't understand. I decided my request would be impudent, and sadly resigned myself to the warm pillow. Oh well, I'll survive, I suppose, it's not that bad. My hair got into my eyes, and I turned my head to get it out of the way. It worked. The last thing I remember is almost falling on Naruto. I need details of what happened next, I exclaimed weakly, and fell silent. Oh, how I dislike this state. And if it were just physical fatigue, no, my thoughts are barely moving either. My cousin heeded my pleas and generously described everything that had happened. I suspect he extracted the first half from Naruto, and the second from his and my relatives, but since he conveyed this information to me, it's forgivable. Naruto, realizing he had an unconscious Haim in his arms, the Hyuga instantly remembered my joke about being dragged into the bushes, and called the Hyuga clan guys. The funniest thing is, they actually showed up, he showed up. A close acquaintance or relative of Ko, as far as I understood from Niji's slip of the tongue. Naruto handed my unconscious body to the grim Hyuga, pointed a suspicious finger at him, and threatened that if he was a Jonin from Cloud, he'd be torn to pieces. I can just imagine the looks on their faces, and sent the shinobi with my body off to the block. I was about to gallop after him, but remembering the attitude of almost all my clanmates, he turned abruptly and went to pester Sasuke and Ino, just to keep himself occupied. That Jonin from Cloud, but really just a Chunin from Konoha, carried me home and handed me over to Natsu, Hanabi's nanny. She undressed me and sent my clothes to the wash, carefully cleaned my nosebleed, and laid me down on the bed. She either forgot about my being in the water or didn't pay any attention to it, but the next morning I was diagnosed with a fever. And since shinobi medicine shamefully lowers its eyes when faced with common illnesses, all I could do was lie there and recover. And so, on the third day, I woke up, and, as Niji meticulously assessed, my temperature was almost normal. I wrapped myself in the blanket, like a caterpillar in a cocoon, and fell silent. If I were to be sick, I'd do it with relish, that is, do nothing and enjoy the brief peace. But my cousin vindicatively dashed my happiness, declaring that, all right, he'd help me make up for lost time studying. My brother chose to ignore my quiet, angry hiss. The worst part wasn't even the lessons with my genius cousin, who for some reason assumed everyone was supposed to be as smart as him, but the lack of other friends. No matter how much I begged, no matter how much Niji begged at my instigation, Hayashi, with an indifferent face, wouldn't let me see my friends until I'd at least partially recovered. Either his fatherly love had flared up at the most inopportune time, or this was some other plan. I didn't believe in fatherly love, and I couldn't find a plan, so I simply tried to get better as quickly as possible and, with great vengeance, chased Niji out for tea and jam. Heh, so who's the main avenger now? Seriously? You don't know that? My cousin narrowed his eyes suspiciously as I tried to look confused. I nodded and rolled my eyes, sipping my tea. Tomorrow, the Irionans promised me an exemption from bed rest, which meant a meeting with friends. Not everyone is a genius from the kami like you, there are ordinary people too, I said, sighing for the 100th time. My cousin nodded and obediently explained to me how clans with Kekkei the Genkai connects two types of chakra. He slyly asked how chakra even acquires an elemental color, and was satisfied with the result. I finished my tea, then stealthily, as discreetly as possible, scooped the remaining berries from the cup and quickly swallowed them. It was such a breach of etiquette, horribly so. But the jam was delicious, and etiquette frankly didn't matter these days, so it was fine. I almost giggled, thinking that my teacher, an old man with an unpleasantly high voice, would have had a heart attack from this. Of course, I didn't wish his death, but I only acknowledge etiquette when it's truly necessary. Negotiations, important conversations, attempts to hide my true feelings behind cold indifference? Sure. But in everyday life, I don't want to hide anything, nor do I want to push myself into a completely unnecessary cage. Rules and regulations. The next day, The first thing I did was fight for the opportunity to not just get out of bed, but to go to the academy. Hayashi was mysteriously silent, but Natsu and Jin were unanimous in insisting that I still needed to rest, and the academy was such a strain. I managed to coax Jin into teaching me a technique from her vast medical, almost medical, and completely non-medical arsenal, and she nodded dumbfoundedly, thoughtfully placing her index finger to her chin. Although, as I discovered, 33 is already far from a young woman, and yet she looks 10 years younger. 33 is quite a good age for a shinobi. Natsu, I couldn't talk her into it, so I just swore I wouldn't train or fight today, even if Irika-sensei ordered me to, and taking Niji's arm, I took off. My sister's nanny just waved her hand. She must have realized I really wanted to go to the academy. In reality, I just couldn't wait to see Naruto. And so I was sick for a whole week and a bit. Hello, Irika-sensei. I peered into the classroom, but stopped mid-sentence. It wasn't Irika at all who stood at the board. The teacher smiled at me and nodded to a seat in the front row. I didn't want to sit there, but disobeying sensei would have been very impolite, so I sat down, pulled out my writing utensils, and prepared to listen. So, since Hinata-chan. He looked at me questioningly, as if asking if he'd guessed the name correctly. I nodded. Yes, I had. Hinata-chan's a little late, so I'll introduce myself again, Mizuki-sensei. I'll be filling in for Irika-sensei while he's sick. The class greeted the new teacher with a stiff expression, and I pursed my lips and started taking notes on what the teacher had said. Wow. I didn't think he'd show up before the exam, even though it was only a little over 6 months away. So maybe it wasn't surprising. I glanced sideways at my neighbor and nearly fell off my desk. It was so amusing to see Sakura next to me, staring devotedly at the teacher. I don't even know how Mizuki tolerates it. I would have hidden somewhere far away. The lesson was incredibly boring, but during recess, I calmly gathered my things and moved to Naruto's desk. Green eyes bored into my back the whole way, and I shuddered. So what was Sakura so mad about? I didn't think I'd done anything to her. So, I sat next to Uzumaki, not Uchiha, who would probably have let me in without even batting an eye. Although, he lets everyone in without even batting an eye, but Ino seems to do it more often. Smiling, I spread across the desk like a sort of purple. It used to be my favorite color, and I still don't mind seeing it in my wardrobe in various shades, and froze. I could sense Naruto's anxiety and contentment nearby, and I closed my eyes. Good. Are you cured? Naruto asked cheerfully, and I nodded. Yeah. I'm cured. So cured that my head was buzzing and there were specks of dust in my eyes, but I didn't want to tell the guy that at all. My problems are my problems. And he probably felt guilty about me falling over. This is Naruto, after all. How did you survive a week without me, in the company of Yamanaka, Uchiha, and the genius Hyuga? I asked, chuckling. Wow, if their personalities were the same as Kishimoto's, a week in the company of such people would be hell. Niji, who talks about fate and humiliates everyone with a single glance. Sasuke, who humiliates not even with a glance, but with silence, and constantly with an incomprehensible face and goals. And for dessert, Ino, who throws herself at Uchiha and talks about Uchiha and other girlish nonsense. If Kishimoto could arrange such a meeting, he'd immediately rewrite the characters' personalities. It's like Sherlock from the series of the same name. It's great to watch, but if you're around him, like John, you immediately realize Watson has the patience of a saint. And while it's not quite the same with Niji, it's spot on with Sasuke from the anime and manga. It's fine, Naruto said, confused. Yeah, right, he didn't understand my reasoning. Why weren't we allowed in? We were trying to visit you, Dadabayo, he exclaimed emotionally. I winced. Damn, the mystery of Hayashi's behavior still hasn't been solved, which is a blow to my ego. I urgently need my own pocket Sherlock Holmes to explain all this nonsense going on here. I asked him a few more questions, he answered them happily, and the rest of the day went by very quickly, which is not surprising. I did indeed leave half the lessons, honestly explaining the reason to Mizuki-sensei. He nodded, smiled invitingly, and said that my skills didn't need to be tested anyway. I was a Heim, after all. Hugh. The sticky look in his back made me shudder. Little to me Sakura, and also Mizuki on head fell down.